then it's fraud. It's only fraud. It's misrepresentation. Whether you put something on the contract that's not true.
Right. Well, that's good. Great.
Then you can say you lied, we're canceling on fraud, right? Like your fraud did this. We accepted your offer based on this and it's not true. You and your lender lied, we're canceling. And legally, you probably have the right to. Two things here under I, which is J and K. Final verification, 5 days, which is still the same. That's your final walkthrough. Please do your final walkthrough. Do not. You can't do the final walkthrough for your buyer. Please do everything.
Do I have to do Avid no more?
So if you do a final, you still have to do your Avid in effect. Assignment of request. So in the contract, you're allowed to assign the contract. And most of the time you see assignees when they need to add someone to the loan, right? I need to add the husband or the wife to the loan because the husband actually doesn't have enough money and doesn't actually qualify for the loan. So we're going to add someone in to help with the loan, right? That is an assignment. And that's why when you fill out the form, the AOAA, it's an assignment of contract. I'm assigning this to a new buyer. Now this says before the contract was open, you could go to day 29 of the a 30-day contract, request an assignment, and it would be fine and legal and all that stuff. So now they put a 17-day window on it.
So is that the same? So is that the same as assigning it to like something investment? Right?
Yeah. So this would apply to wholesalers. So wholesalers will say, "I'm going to do a 30-day escrow," and they go all the way to day 29 of the escrow. And the seller's like, they're going to pass it off to another investor. They have trouble finding an investor. They go to day 29 and they say, "Oh, I finally found someone. Assign." The problem is it blows up the close of escrow, right? Because the new buyer comes in, they got to sign all the docs, they got to get all this stuff lined up, and it delays close right at the end. And it was blowing up contracts because wholesalers and other people were coming in. Or even if you wanted to add the spouse and they need to add for the lender to put it on the title, right? I want the spouse on title, not going to be on the loan, but I want it on title, I got to add it to the contract. And it was coming in at the end of these contracts, and it was delaying escrow like a week because now the lender has to review that document, and it throws off docs, and it throws off all this stuff, right? So to help sellers, it says, if you're going to assign the request, it must be done within 17 days. That means if your lender, the reason they did 17, because if you'll notice here in the future, they shorten the loan contingency to 17 days. It means if you need to add someone because of your loan, you better ask for it prior to close within those 17 days.
So
right?
Here it's saying you're requesting it.
Yes.
So is it saying that you can do it no matter what? But it has to be agreed upon. Does that make sense? Like
Seller must still agree.
This says request.
Yeah.
If you put 0 days there.
Yeah, you can put 0 and then they can't request. Yeah, then they can't assign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they can always they don't even have the right to request it. They can't say, "Hey, I want to add someone," right? So.
Okay.
So. Questions? All right, we're getting to the contingencies. This is the fun part. Aisha?
In what situation would a person, why would a person put 0 days? Like, I understand so that you can't assign it.
The listing agent may counter that. So you may say, 3K, assignment of request shall be 0 days on your counter. That means I don't want you to assign the contract. I'm not allowing you buyer to change buyers or anything. You have to, your buyer's your buyer, that's it. You got to close like this, right? So. Now, just because you put 0 doesn't mean in the end the seller can change their mind and approve something, but they have the right to say, I don't have to review your request. You want to request it? I don't have to consider that, right? So, right, go away. Just like your request for repair, right? They don't have to even respond to it, right? So if it's past that date, you can request it, they don't have to respond. No, close, right?
So the norm would be to leave it as is, and then if the seller doesn't want to agree to the assignment, they just don't accept the assignment.
Right, yeah.
Kind of like the current way.
Yeah, kind of like loans. Loan is, just so you know, this moved from 21 days to 17 days. The reason is CAR wanted to make it simplified where all the contingencies end on the same day if possible. So now they are all 17. So just so you know, I've talked to a few lenders. They don't know what.
Freaking out.
None of them are freaking out. They're like, I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. Yeah, I'm like, okay, they're closer, right? So,
Like now.
well, lenders are gonna have to figure it out because it's 17 days, right? So instead of 70 days now. So, okay, appraisal. Appraisal can be based on the value, appraised value, or minimum purchase price, or blank. All right. They allow you to even lower that amount if you want to.
So like,
So if you want 450, you can put 440 in there with a $10,000 appraisal.
Mhm.
Right? On a conventional loan, not VA or FHA.
Yeah, so if you do an appraisal gap of 10,000, you'd write 440, $10,000 appraisal gap. Yes.
Does that save you on that federal law, like the?
No.
No, what it does is it makes it, no, it doesn't, that cannot save you, this, nothing overrides the federal law, nothing. Nothing you put in here or put in writing will override that federal right. It's automatic, it's like the Bill of Rights Constitution, it's there, it's done, yes.
Aside from FHA and VA, if you put a lower dollar amount than your contract price, say your contract is 500, and in this appraisal section, you put 480, does that automatically give you the appraisal gap of 20,000? Or do you have to add that?
Yes, so if you put a lower amount in, it's saying, I'm gonna bridge the appraisal gap with
Okay,
cash.
so that is.
So
your
this
version
is-
rather
this
than
is-
saving it.
CAR's attempt to eliminate, because the appraisal gap language, I don't know if you guys know, is like all over the place. Everyone's writing it all different ways. So this is CAR's attempt, and they obviously lawyer reviewed way to write it. So if you're gonna do an appraisal gap, yeah, so I'm gonna offer I'm only approved to 440, but I'm guaranteeing it for an extra 10,000, right? 450 offer, 440 appraisal. And that's telling them, I'm gonna bridge the gap.
But you still attach an addendum to the offer for L2AB saying, bridge the gap up to 10,000.
If you want to, I would just write it in and then write it in the
Wait,
email.
what amount would you put in it?
No, whatever your contract
Whatever your
price is,
gap.
whatever your,
Yeah.
whatever you wanted to, whatever your
So
client
if your
agrees.
contract is 500 and you're going to gap.
Oh, below?
Yeah.
Because the person comes in low, right? You're gonna say, I won't even cancel. This is saying, I won't even use I can't use the appraisal contingency. Say I offer 500,
Right.
and say it comes in at 495, I can't use the appraisal contingency now to cancel. Because my appraisal amount is 490.
Right.
It's a backwards way to make it
It's
happen.
backwards.
But that's the way you have to write it
Right, I got you.
to make it legal, right? This is why CAR did it this way, because they want to make it
So it's subtracting from what?
right. So this is saying, at what amount, and as a buyer, at what amount can I, if the appraisal comes in below this amount, can I cancel the deal on my own? Cancel, get my deposit. Yes.
John, I'm looking at it once again from the listing agent's
Yes.
point of view, right? If you're submitting an offer to me and putting a dollar amount, let's just say $10,000 above your original offer. As a listing agent, no, above.
Why would you put the appraisal gap coverage above?
That's right. If you're writing an offer 490, you write 500 here,
Yeah, that's what I
letting me know that you're willing to come up
$10,000, yes,
right?
yes.
As a listing agent, though, you are, as a buyer's agent, reducing your power to negotiate because now I know, well, let me counter at 500. Why bother,
You could.
right?
You could.
Compared to the bridge gap scenario. that
You could
we
say,
normally
don't
do.
even, I want a 500,000 appraisal because you guaranteed it, right? So,
Give me a $500,000 offer, not a $400,000.
but they may not be able to because say they're only approved at 490.
But
Their
they're-
pre-approval, the lender of pre-approval may say only 490, but I'm bridging more.
Oh, I got
What if they're stuck at 490? They can't go to 500. Legally, the pre-approval, I can't go above 490, right? So then they're stuck there. So then buyer said, I'm willing to do gas, and you keep it. Say they're stuck at 490. They want to say they offer 500. You counter 525. They're like, we'll bring the cash. The appraisal's still at 490. The house has to appraise for 490. If it blows below 490, they can cancel. Anything above 490, the buyer's on the hook to pay that. Period.
Unless they're FHA or VA.
Unless they're FHA or VA, correct. Unless they're FHA or VA. Correct. And just by the way, this FHA VA thing has been there all the time. It has not changed. It's just most agents don't know about it, and the DRE is trying to make sure that agents know about it.
So for the listing side, then you should say, if someone marked that in there, you say,
So it works.
you would want to remove that?
They just know.
Oh, it seems
Because
like-
if you remove it, say they're offered 500,
I
right?
want you to.
Say they offer 500, but they put 490 there. They said, I'm gonna bring a $10,000 appraisal, right? Say you say, no, I don't want you to do 400, I want you to do 500. The lender's like, I can't write a letter for that because they're only approved 490.
That's the only scenario though. If they're coming in above, like only, how you're saying is like only if they're approved. But you know, there's some people that are.
Some people have way more approval,
Yeah,
but do you know, you're gonna have to call the lender and ask them,
yeah, but then.
and they might not even tell you, right? Because that's gonna, because that's gonna undermine the negotiation, right? So you call the lender and say, how much can they really get approved to? The lender's not gonna tell you as a listing agent, right?
Well, see, what's confusing, because there's times where you just in the market have to, you know, go above
Yeah.
and beyond.
What are you guys writing? You're taking their max approval and you're writing cash above that, right? Is what you guys are doing. So this is exactly that scenario.
Okay.
Exactly that scenario, right? They're only approved to 490. I'm gonna offer 500. I'm putting 490 appraisal, but I'm purchase price is 500.
But
Yes.
So if you have 3 offers with all 3 different kinds of loans, you want to swing the conventional way.
Yeah, so there's already a bias to conventional now. It's gonna, once I just start realizing this, it's gonna be a strong bias to conventional, right?
My first,
Yeah, so if your buyer's at 640, 650, just know you're FHA VA, so you're gonna really wanna push them to 680, you're barely getting conventional, right? You're gonna wanna get to 700, 720, right? So,
We need to be very careful because the amount you're gonna put on this box, L2, has to sync with the FHA VA addendum,
yes.
right? The problem with that though is
No, well, it doesn't, what they write here doesn't matter to the FHA VA addendum. So if you wrote the purchase price is 500, I wrote 490 here, I'm gonna get 10,000 gap, right? The FHA VA addendum says, if the appraisal comes in below 500, the purchase price cancel.
so
Yes.
what that is basically like legally, governmentally, they can't remove that contingency. That doesn't mean that they can't honor paying 10,000 over the appraised value. Because we just have to make sure that as listing agents, we have to make sure we're educating our sellers that if this is an FHA or a VA offer,
Yeah,
this is their right that they cannot federally remove. So as long
no,
as they're
they can still
clear-
bridge the gap, so they don't have to exercise it.
Right.
They can say, oh, no, we still want the house, oh, here's $10,000. They can do it, they don't have to exercise the right, but they have the right to.
And then
Right.
the seller still has a right to cancel and lower. So that's
Correct,
the risk
correct,
that
yes.
everybody is taking.
Correct.
See, there is situations where it's not their max approval. It's like, say you have someone else, like 2 houses, they go.
Yes, we know that.
But what I'm saying is, what if you want to do a gap appraisal, but the loan, that wouldn't be correct, or like when you say your max loan amount?
Who's got a public?
Yeah, exactly, like, yes, is there gonna be unique situations? Of course.
Well, those are like a lot of those. So if I want to just do a gap appraisal with that scenario with the lender, like say they're approved for
Even if you have buyers that are approved to 700,000 and they only want to buy at 500,000, right? It doesn't matter. They can say, hey, I want to offer on this house. I'm going to put 500, but right at 550, I'll bring 550 cash. They may approve to 700. Doesn't matter. They can choose. This is the buyer's choice. It's not the lender's choice. It's the buyer's
I know, but
choice.
you're saying max.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't this CAR's basic purpose of this is to just minimize the language issues that we're
Correct.
having?
On appraisal
So they're
gaps.
basically just saying, hey, Mr. Buyer, you want to put in an offer for 500, but you only want to bridge 10, just put 490 in here.
Correct.
If the appraiser doesn't come in at 490, you as the seller are going back to the drawing board to negotiate.
Or yeah, the buyer has a right to
Whereas
cancel. Seller can drop it if they want to.
Right,
So,
whereas before there was crazy language with some people putting in.
yeah, we're saying
Oh,
appraisal gap. Does that? So
Yeah,
imagine we wrote. I've seen this a lot. There's an appraisal gap of $10,000. I've seen that all the time.
right.
Okay, what's that mean? So say it comes in low. So what if it came in
There's
at
no minimum.
485?
Right.
Listen to what if it came at 485? I got a 10,000 gap. Does that mean the buyer has to go to 495? Is the seller required to accept that?
Exactly.
Is the seller required to go from 500 to 495?
No. It was it was
But
rare.
is that, you can say no, but it doesn't say anything. It says there's an appraisal gap.
Yeah.
Well, in a
It doesn't say what the seller has to do. It doesn't say what the buyer has to do,
Right.
right? It doesn't say anything. That's what they're trying to do.
Exactly.
Well, because not every year that is strong term.
Yeah. Well, this is cleaner because it says you
You
put in the appraisal amount you're willing to guarantee.
Yeah.
Whatever your buyer is willing to guarantee,
Yeah.
everything above that amount must be cash, and your buyer's got to be aware of that, right? If there's any difference, well, if you're just going off the purchase price like normal, leave it blank. But if you're doing a gap, then you're going to bring cash above the appraisal price, and you put the appraisal lower,
That's what,
and that gives more assurance to the seller.
right.
Because the seller's saying, the buyer says, I'm reducing my ability to cancel this deal based on appraisal. I'm only gonna allow to cancel if it goes below this amount, which is better for the seller.
The bigger the spread, the more advantageous for the seller.
Seller it is, yeah, because the seller has that you have to stay in the contract,
Exactly.
right? You have to stay in the contract. So the price will, because if that number's real low, if the appraisal still comes in low, you say, buyer, you're still stuck because it's still above, right? Closed deal, right?
I like what Farm said, that.
Yeah, this one actually helps the seller because it restricts, and actually it's a true appraisal gap, because it forces the buyer to acknowledge a certain price that they're gonna lessen their ability to cancel appraisal.
This makes it easier. It's gonna be harder on negotiation. Too clean to understand.
Too clean?
Like,
You mean you can't pull your wool over, you mean you can't trick other agents, is that what you're saying? You can't trick other agents?
I'm just saying.
Are you gonna be like, I have a non-contingent loan, but this is FHA, so don't worry, right?
Hey, look, people
Right?
be like, this is some real messy. Right? So,
I can see you guys already, this is FHA loan, wink, don't worry, wait, all contingencies, right? You know,
So to tie in with what Farm said, if I'm negotiating this, I'm gonna be like, paragraph L2 to be 450,000.
Boom. Well, it depends if they have the cash. What if they don't have the cash? What if their max is 10? I have 10,000 to give. I can't give more. Then you're taking them out of the realm. They said, now I got to bring 50 cash. No, I can't. Right.
Okay, move to the next offer.
Hope you got more than one. Okay, if you're removing loan contingency there, appraisal contingency there. See, removal of appraisal contingency does not eliminate approval cancellation rights in effect. It literally says right there. It says if you waive appraisal, it doesn't remove the right.
we're gonna know who reads these contracts.
Yeah, the good part is you're getting trained, and it's probably going to take a year. I would estimate it's 9 months to a year, but you may have an advantage for a year where you can play other people, right? Because you know, right? So play other people again. No, I didn't say that. Cancel that.
You're recording.
I didn't say that, Asper. Cancel that. Next one.
We're honest.
We are, remember that, win-win, integrity, right? Win-win. Investigation of property, so it's still 17 days to do your inspection contingencies, but I want to know, we call it inspection contingency, but there's actually several contingencies that make up what we call the inspection contingency. It's a generic term for several contingencies in the contract, and they put them here so that you know that there are actually several contingencies in the contract being applied under inspection contingencies. So there's inspection, and then obviously we're down here, seller documents, preliminary comments, so there's other stuff that falls in there. But I want you to know there's informational access to the property. This is always in the contract, people just didn't see it because it was way back on paragraph 14 toward the bottom and most people didn't know it. What if I have a 10-day contingency, I do inspections, everything's good, I release my physical inspection contingency, and day 17, I want to go and see the property again. Can the seller say no?
You have to see it.
So if you didn't know, it wasn't there though, but separate from the inspection contingency, there is a right for the buyer to access the property for 17 days. Even if contingencies are waived, even if all that happens, they can come in for informational purposes. But if you notice, this says buyer right to access the property for informational purposes, not a contingency, does not create cancellation rights, and applies even if the contingencies are removed. So say they inspected 10 days, release contingencies, buyer says, I want to go in, I want to measure for a TV and some couches and stuff. They come in, they measure, they notice, wow, there's like a stain over there. Oh my gosh, that's a new disclosure. I want to cancel. And this says, no, sorry, gave up that right. If you released your inspection contingency, too bad.
So there's no further inspection.
Yeah, there's no, what's it saying is if you access the property after you release the inspection contingency, the buyer has no right to to just find new material facts that says, I got a new material fact, now I can disclose, now I can cancel, right? So.
Even if like the house was broken into or vandalized.
Correct, so if that's the case, so if the condition changes in the middle of escrow seller must disclose that.
What if the condition?
Correct, that's what they're saying. So the condition didn't change of the home from the time of offer. We go through inspections, condition never changed. And now we're here and somehow they find a hole in the wall. Maybe your inspector missed it, right? Maybe whatever happened, right? well, that'd be a change condition. So if I offered and there was no leak in the ceiling, no leak, and 10 days go by and we inspect and there's no leak, day 17, I go to do information, I do access to measure, and now there's a leak, that's a change in condition. So now the seller must disclose a change, saying, oh, we had a leak, we repaired it, here's an invoice, we're good to go.
So if there's a change in material fact. like
Correct. If there is a change in the material fact, what happens?
New information.
If you have new information, what does that do? You get 5 days.
Oh, you get
Yeah.
So the buyer, if there's a new material fact that must be disclosed, because if you had a leak and you need to redisclose that, it should be an addendum to the TDS. You would make an addendum to the TDS. Now you're redisclosing the TDS, and whenever you do that, you have 5 days.
So like with these storms that we've had, you know,
Correct.
you could have done the inspection, there was nothing there, but now.
Now, yeah, now the fence blew down. Now I must say the fence blew down. We're fixing it. We're getting a bid to fix it. We'll fix it before close. But addendum to yes, buyer could say, sayonara. Cancel on inspection, new material fact.
I have a new question. Well, so this happens, this is not an uncommon thing that happens during your loan contingency where the contract is written with the buyer's intent that they're doing conventional, and then all of a sudden at closing, they're like, oh, we need an FHA mandatory clause signed because, oh, the buyer switched to FHA.
To switch loans, yes.
And they never told us, so
What
at
happens?
what point, because, or they need a new appraisal or something like that, what happens then?
Okay, great question. It is addressed in the contract later on, so I'll get to
Okay.
that. So, but Carr knows that. It was a common issue, and they've addressed it. And actually, they've addressed other things like, what if your lender, they said we're all good on smoke detectors, carbon monoxide, and water heater bracing. Appraiser goes, says there's no carbon monoxide tender. It's going to be another $150 for the buyer to get a reinspection done, right? Now they address that. Who pays for that now? So,
Are we on the CR yet?
see all what? We're
The
here.
removal waiver contingency?
Where?
Oh, the well, my question is this, the CR to the right. Move, right there, right there. So you're saying it says on there, it says, at the time of offer, it's against agent's advice. But what if it's our advice? Because of competitiveness of the market. We just say, my recommendation, and send the camera.
What you need to say is, and I'm going to teach you in this contract, you need to say, look, to get your offer accepted in this scenario, they're asking for this. This is what it means. This is the risk to you, Mr. Buyer, if you agree to this and sign this contingency release, right? As your agent, I can't recommend that you would do this. Now, if you really want the house, that's fine. But as a broker, I can't recommend that you give up these rights.
As a friend, I could say, go ahead and keep it.
Here are your options.
No, you can say, here are your options, but as a broker, I can't, as a realtor, I can't recommend that you give up rights in this contract because it could come back to bite you. And it may make you lose your deposit.
But now they'd be like, yeah, what do you recommend? But then they read this and it's like, well, it says right here that not get it against.
Yeah, that's important because, oh, you don't do broker stuff. So here's what you all do. I'll go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it, right?
No.
And then we have, then things go bad and then there's a lawsuit.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what your buyer say then? What did your buyer say?
She recommended it.
She told me.
Well, we want to expect that.
But if there's only he said, she said, I could say, no, she told you no, she didn't. And then if they don't have proof, we win.
Right.
That's what you.
But I've had this happen where the buyer agent says, I don't recommend that. You're like, we want the home, do it.
Yes.
I don't recommend that. Do it. You could lose, this could happen, this could happen, this could, I don't recommend that. They say, do it. And they do it and something goes bad happens. And then what did they say? Then he said, he told me to, even though you didn't. So, right, is what matter happened here. That's why do you think I hound your guys' contracts so much and stuff like that and I blow you guys up? Because when a lawsuit happens, it's all this, right? It's all this. This is what matters, right? Because this is what you can prove, right? Okay. Well, hold on one second. Contingency removal, they put this in there, CR attached. You must attach a CR to your contract if you're going to remove contingency. Remember, we're an active removal contingency contract. That means the contingency is not removed until the buyer signs documents saying so. So I've seen offers where they're putting 0 days for inspection, 0 days for appraisal, right? What does that mean?
Nothing.
Nothing. They still have inspection right. They still have appraisal right. They're just late. Day one. They still have it. They still have to release a document that says I release this, so they still have it. So if you say D0 and you're okay with that, and 10 days later they say I want to cancel inspection, they can't. Because you never noticed to perform them because they were late on day one. You could have noticed performance. So 2 days, fix that, release it.
So I guess you guys just run a rag until they build it into the market and say, you know what?
No, what you do is you take it and you write a counter offer that puts the contract the way you want. What are the savvy listing? I do this all the time. We get off. Well, I used to we get an offer and it's poorly written. You know what I do? I'm like writing a fat old one with a text overflow addendum, like 20 things I'm going to fix in the contract. And you know why I do it? Because one, I want to fix the contract the way I want it to be. But two, I want to show the buyer's agent to their buyer he's a dumbass, right? So, and he doesn't know how to write a contract, right? So,
Right.
all right. Are we good on informational access? We're clear on that?
Yes.
Okay. Review of seller documents 17 days.
Yikes.
Before you gave them seller disclosures, the listing agent gave seller disclosures. When were they due? 7 days. I have to give it within 7 days, right? When were they due back? The buyer has to review them, they have to sign them, and they have to give them back, right? When were they supposed to come back from the buyer side? When the TC got around to it, right? And a lot of times we've seen contracts where they only come back right at the end, right? They were just never disclosed. So this says now, buyer's agent, you have 17 days to get these back to this listing. Now the seller can say, if I don't have seller disclosures back for my file, day 17, notice to perform, give me my seller disclosures. So it's giving power to the listing side to get the docs back, right? All right. Preliminary title report, did you know that's a contingency as well? Common interest disclosures, which is HOA docs, right? Those disclosures, review of lease or lien items, those are lien docs. So for example, let's see a good example. You order HOA docs. They come in late because the management is late. They come in on day 22. Boom, you hand them over. Guess what happens? 5 days. Say you have a solar on the house, as a solar lease, you get the solar docs, but you don't get the solar docs till day 22. Boom, there, 5 more days to cancel now. So this only happens because listing agents are lazy and don't get the stuff up front. So I recommend when you get a listing, pre-open escrow, order the prelim, order the NHD, order the HOA docs, get solar docs if you need it. Get what you need so that on day 1 you can hand them off. And actually, we'll talk about that. You should actually hand them off before day 0. You should hand them off at the time of offer. But we're going to talk about that. So 17 days for all these. Seller buyer party COP is the same documents. Any questions on that controversial section? Apparently. So.
John, what about a insurance thing? Would that protect? Wouldn't that protect the seller the home when you buy that buyer's buyer's insurance on the house?
Yeah, but what happens if you make a claim? Your rate goes up.
Yeah.
So seller doesn't disclose something, you look the other way, it's a hole in the wall, or something happens, and now your buyer picks up the cost. Yeah, I don't know what buyer would do that, but the buyer's gonna be like, hell no, right?
No.
So,
Yeah.
and usually the agent's writing the check then, right? So,
Cover
okay, time of possession. This is a change. What was the time of possession? When did change of possession happen? Change of possession happened in the whole contract. 6 p.m. on the day of recordation. They have changed it. Now it's upon notice of recordation. So it's no longer 6 p.m. It's the time of recordation.
That's the default, but you can still do. I see.
You can
still
check
do.
Oh, you can check 6. It's funny. It was always 6, and people are like, I don't like 6. I wanted a time of recording because that's what we normally do. And now people are like, I don't like that. That's scary. Let me do 6 because you don't know the exact time. It could be at 8 a.m. It could be at noon. It could be at 5 p.m. Right?
And you have to wait for 6.
So it's now recordation, but it should be anyways. Your seller should be out of the house by the time you're doing this. Like they got to be out of the house, right? Okay. Vacant units. I'm going to talk about the seller occupied. We're talking about rent backs. Now the rent backs are built in. which I love. Now, no, you want to talk about appraisal gaps, man, I've seen some crazy rent back language all over the place. So now rent backs are not, you don't have to put them in, just write them in, and it says if it's less than 29 days, use a SIP, and if it's less than 30 days, or more than 30 days, use a RLS. Now I'm going to tell you about this. This is important. What happened? Well, you guys are property guys. What happens at 30 days?
You become a landlord.
You become a landlord. Under California law, anything that is rented space, once it hits day 30, all tenant landlord law kicks in. Everything kicks in. You're a landlord, you're a tenant. So if your buyer puts in there, I'm going to give them a 30-day rent back, your buyer is agreeing for those 30 days, I am a landlord, they are the tenant. Clear? Now, if you do a license, a SIP is a license. What's a license? Anyone know what a license is?
Temporary.
I allow you to temporarily use this property, right? But on a license, you can do things because there's not as much law. You have more flexibility. So when you buy a ticket to a concert at Golden One Arena, you are actually getting a license to use that seat for a specific period of time. And if you were happy to, and there's rules around that. If you smoke, you can lose the seat. If you damage the seat, you can lose the seat, right? All these rules. So they can put a bunch of rules because it's just a license saying, I own it, you can temporarily use it but I'm going to put these restrictions. And if you actually read the SIP, it says, seller, you got to maintain the property as is. You got to pay the bills. You got to do all this stuff. So we had a question, recently this happened in the other brokerage. They called me and said, hey, we have a 30-day rent back. We did an RLS, everything's clean. Seller's moving out, transfer to possession, right at club, right? 29 days in at the rent back, they're going on day 30. They transfer, we moved out, here you go, buyers, here's the key, right? And says that, oh, by the way, the water heater just went out. It's not doing any hot water. Are they?
You're the landlord.
30 days, you're the landlord.
You are.
It was a 30-day rent back, RLS, the buyer is the landlord. So when they said, buyers need to call me and says, can I make the seller do that? I mean, they were living there when it broke. And I said, no, you're at 30 days. You're a RLS. That means you're the landlord, they're the tenant. When something breaks on a house and you're the landlord tenant, who pays?
Landlord.
Landlord pays. Your buyer's responsible for that water heater. Now, if it was 29 days and it was a SIP, they could have said, no, seller, you're supposed to maintain this in the same condition it was before. The water isn't working, you fix it. See the difference?
Yes.
So you know the power of the SIP versus license is much better for your sellers than a tenant law RLS. So if they need a 30-day rent back, on the buyer side, I would say I'll give you a 29-day rent back SIP. On the buy side. If you're on the seller side, RLS, that helps you because now the buyer is responsible for the condition of the home, not the seller.
Yeah.
Clear as mud?
Yeah.
Well, then it can get messier as well, right? If they don't want to leave, then you got to go through.
Correct. So California law is to say I do a SIP for 29 days, but say they stay over. What happens?
Screwed.
You're screwed. You went to, you're a tenant, landlord tenant now. You're screwed. Day 30, you're screwed. Landlord. What? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're still landlord tenant. The law says if there's no rent agreed to, it's whatever's reasonable. That's what it says. So if you went to court and says I need to get them out and I want my rent back, the court's gonna say, comps in this area, this is the rent you owe back, right? Or your expectation. They're gonna just reason. FYI.
Okay.
No matter either way though, if you want to remove them, the only way to remove someone of possession of a home is how?
Or eviction, what action?
Court action, eviction. It's the only way. I don't care if they had a 3-day rent back and they don't move out. Eviction's the
What's the cost on it?
$1,500, $2,000 now? Going up and up and up. So, are we clear on RLSs and SIPs? It's important you understand this because that you can protect your client knowing this, and then most agents don't know that. Okay, tenant occupied, TOPA is a new form. They said if the house is tenant occupied. Now, this is a change. Before, if the tenants were moving out, before you didn't have to use a form, you just said tenants are moving out, buyers are just going to move into primary. Now, CAR wants you to use the form no matter, even if the tenants are moving out, because we're getting a lot of situations where the tenants are given a 60-day notice. We're gonna close and the buyers are gonna move in. What happens?
Tenants don't move.
The tenants don't move because they can't find a place because they're getting sweet rent here because of, and they're trying to go out there realize it's $1,000 more a month and I can't afford it. Well, I'm just gonna write it as long as I can, right? And they talk to someone and says they have to evict you. You're like, sweet, let me stay here, right? And they stay. So because of those situations, we want to be TOPA. So we're gonna, TOPA kind of says like, hey, here's a tenant has these rights. What happens if, tenants in the property still is closed? What are the buyer's options, right? And it kind of explains that, right? So I'm not going to TOPA, but if you're going to write an offer on a tenant occupied property, even if they're going to vacate, you need to use form TOPA, okay? Any questions on that? N1, delivery of documents, 7 days, which is still the same. That means when you go to sell disclosures, sign and return escrow holders instructions and provisions. This is new. Does anyone know what escrow holder provisions instructions are? This was back in your testing days. Chris, that was a long time. So, did you know that when you write your contract and you give it to escrow, escrow prepares escrow instructions,
That's right.
right? And they get the buyer and seller to sign the escrow instructions. Did you know that escrow instructions are a contract? It's actually a contract. And actually that contract supersedes your contract. If there's something different in the escrow instructions from your contract, the escrow instructions win. So we were having some people being really cute. They were putting the offer accepted, they were put the deposit in, but they never signed the escrow instructions. So there was never a valid escrow. And then 10 days later, they may waive all contingencies, but they say, doesn't matter. There's no valid escrow. I never signed the escrow instructions. And they're trying to cancel, even though they wait. So now it says, buyer seller, you got to sign the escrow instructions with the buyer.
Wow.
Time to pay fees for HOA or doc. Remember we said, if you notice there was a doc, you may not notice, but that was there, is if there are HOA and the HOA docs have ordered, the seller must do it within 3 days. It was actually in the old contract, they just put it here, but you may have not known that. But I recommend you get those documents ahead of time, prior to this.
Well, so just going back to the escrow holder and your key situation.
Yeah.
If they don't sign, do you have to do the 2-day notice to perform?
Correct. So on this form, if escrow is saying, hey, the other party never signed the escrow instructions, as a listing agent, you would have to notice to perform. You passed your deadline, remove it, or I can cancel it.
Okay.
Or sign them, or I can cancel it. Now this is new. Install smoke detector, CO type water. Remember we said who pays for it, right? But now we said, how quickly do you have to do that? Now it says, because we've had disputes like that where they say, yeah, it's all good. You do the appraisal and it's not good. Right? So what they did is they say, whoever is in charge of doing that, they must do it within 7 days of escrow. It's later in the contract, I'll show you. So.
Oh, there. Sorry. Like looking at the.
No, yeah, it's later in the next page in the boxes, so. But this just says whoever's paying for it, they must do it within 7 days of the contract. And evidence of representative authority 3 days after acceptance. I know a lot of you guys do this. They're like, my seller is a trust. John Lanting had this, right? So we talked about this last time. I have a trust and we got to have evidence of authority. We got to know that person has the right to sign. John Lanting had a seller. They said, I have the right to sign. I have power of attorney to this person who was the trustee of the trust. I'm power of attorney for the trustee. I'm signing for the trustee to sell the house. But the trustee's dead. Dead. But the power of attorney the power of attorney said, even if I die, this person can still sign for me.
In bold.
In bold, it literally bolded. And I said, that is illegal. That is illegal. I said, California law, I pulled it up, it's like California law, someone dies, POA ends, period. So he had signed docs of the POA person of a dead person. So that's my evidence of authority, because if he would have gone and sell that, that's a lawsuit. The real trustee, that means if they die, there's a successor trustee. That successor trustee could say, I want to rescind this deal, and any money lost, get it back. All right, so this is important. I know a lot of you guys just willy-nilly it, but you'd be surprised. Trust me, we've had issues where literally this gets punted. We've had a close happen. We get evidence authority the day after close, and it shows 3 trustees and only 2 people signed to sell the home. And we go back to escrow. I was like, escrow, did you check this? There's 3 people. And like, oops. And they go back and get the 3rd person to sign. If the 3rd person said, no, I'm not signing, undo the sale. All right, so evidence authority. So if you get people doing that, you need to be getting on the evidence authority. Okay. Items included, excluded. Now, before it used to be stoves, refrigerators, washer dryers, right? Now we got a whole list of muck here, okay? And we also changed some standards. So the reason it's a whole list of muck is because agents be fighting over stuff, right? We're trying to figure out what's attached, what's not attached, all this stuff, and it gets all these lawsuits. And so we're like, okay, we're going to make this big. Stoves, ovens, stove oven combos, refrigerators, wine refrigerators. When you check refrigerators, does that include the wine refrigerator?
Gray area.
Who knows?
Does it include the refrigerator in the garage?
Yeah.
Well, if you check refrigerators, it
Yeah.
includes all refrigerators.
Yeah.
Right? Dryers, dishwashers. How's the dishwasher mounted? Attached to the house? No, not plumbing.
Dishwasher, no, all it's a drain.
Have you ever installed a dishwasher or seen anyone?
Yeah.
There's 2 screws right at the top. You slide it in, and then right at those lips of land, and you drill it into the countertop, right? Right up top. Have you ever had your dishwasher go back and forth? You seen those where it rocks?
Yeah.
Guess what?
They're not-
If it rocks, it's not attached. If it's not attached, then the seller can take it because it's not physically attached to the property. So we even have dishwashers on there because we have people like, it's not attached, it's rocking. I'm taking it, right? Microwaves. Now this is different. I'm going to show this video security. We added this in because video security cameras have been the biggest pain in the butt, I tell you. Ring doorbells, oh my God. So video doorbells. They stay with the home.
They're attached.
Well, trust me, I have a dispute right now where it was a Ring doorbell and they come to do their final walkthrough and now it's a regular doorbell. And they're like, bring it back. And they're like, it's mine. And there's a big old fight over a freaking Ring doorbell, right? So I know, I'm like, agent's like, what do you do? I was like, compensate your buyer. Go buy a Ring doorbell. Okay, right, yeah, go. Stop it, right? And next time, clarify. If you want it, clarify it, right? So video security equipment, security alarms other than separate video doorbell and camera equipment, smart home control devices, wall-mounted brackets for video audio. This is a change, okay? A change. Before in the old contract, whenever what we considered attached, so if examine a TV attached to the wall with a bracket, okay, which is common in homes, right? In the old contract, seller takes the TV but leaves the bracket. The bracket is attached. And you could say check the box. Remember in the contract you used to be able to check the box right at the bottom, and it says no, take the bracket but patch the holes.
Yeah.
Remember that in that part? Okay. Now it's switched. It's going all the way. Now it's saying the brackets are not included. So the TV now goes, the bracket goes too, and now by default, the seller has to patch the holes, but not pay. So it moved the standard farther, which is actually right because they should really just take the mount with them. Right?
Yeah.
'Cause most people get their own mount, right? So,
Right.
so now it's more like practice. So if there's any attached, so if they have surround sound here, that's attached, can't change it. But if there was speakers attached by a bracket on the wall, then the whole thing goes.
Question on the video. So say we got in contract with a Ring doorbell system on there. We check the box video doorbells. Seller takes that Ring and replaces it with an off-market brand or $20 cheap one.
The condition of the home cannot change from the time of offer. That would be a change in condition of the home.
But you installed another video doorbell.
It's not that big. Like, what if I had a chandelier, but it's my mom's and I forgot to put it and I change it for a brand new chandelier? Heck, I like that chandelier better. I have to get approval from the buyer, change of condition.
Okay, wow.
Change the condition of the home. If you do repairs to the home during escrow, it's a change in condition. The buyer must approve.
It says on the MLS, chandelier and blah, blah, blah states.
Doesn't matter. What's it say at the bottom of MLS? This information is not accurate and cannot be relied on. Go read it. Go read it. This information is not accurate, has not been verified, and cannot be relied on.
Well, it says to verify yourself.
Yeah, it says buyer verified.
It says on the special
I
notice.
trust me, I had that. See here. got on a listing. It was Lisa's first listing. She had a chandelier and forgot to put it in. And the seller goes and changes it. I was like, hell no, I wanted that chandelier. And she had to go pay like $700 because she's like, I put it in the MLS. I was like, I don't care what's in MLS. It's what's in the contract. What's in the contract. Doesn't matter what's in MLS. So the only thing that matters in MLS, the only thing that you can count on in MLS that you can go fight for is your commission. That is it. Everything else is up for grab. That you can't rely on. Everything else.
But it says so. If you read the MLS under special remarks, and if you read the thing.
Doesn't matter.
It says, you don't believe it. Verify yourself.
Yeah. It's what's in the, trust me. As brokering, you know what I normally say? They say, I got to see that, you know, I go, what does the contract say? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Why don't we pull up the contract and read it? And then we read it. Oh.
Yeah, that doesn't go. Yeah.
So what are you going to do now? Oh, that sucks. Okay, yeah, it sucks. You didn't write it right. Right, so what's in the contract? Okay, we got all this. Above ground pools. Look at the only one that's checked. What is it?
Bathroom mirror.
So if you have a nice bathroom mirror and you hung it up, you know those super nice ones you just hang up instead of mount? Well, we decided as realtors, that still stays with the home, even though it's not attached. Electric car charging systems. If they have a Tesla one, you have, normally it's gonna go now, before it would have to stay.
It has to stay. So if they take it out before it lists, it doesn't matter.
Correct, but how are they gonna charge the car?
Yeah,
Well,
no,
but I mean,
What? So these are things excluded from the contract. So even though they're attached, these are items that are normally attached to the house that would be excluded from saying, no, these are things that are, yeah, attached to the home that you want included in the sale. You want it to transfer, but we're saying, no, they're not going to transfer, even though they're attached.
Check the box.
So we-
It is included.
If you check the box, you're saying, the buyer's going to get it.
okay.
You got to check the box. So if you want the video doorbell, you got to check the box.
Got it.
So this means as agents, you're going to have to be very keen on the house. Which this is, the reason CAR did this is they're trying to make you stop being lazy. Because there's agents being lazy about the video stuff and they weren't checking boxes and they were having disputes at the end. So now we're saying, stop being lazy, look at the house, consider everything before you write the freaking offer, right?
Question.
yeah.
Yes.
If you're representing the seller and the seller has a Tesla charging thing and that thing's $1,000, right?
That's just more like $1,500.
But they want to take it away. They don't want to leave it there.
And say they submit the offer and it's checked, right?
Yeah. What do you do?
Then you counter it out.
You counter
You
it.
say Tesla electric charger in the garage will be removed from the home, right? It will not transfer to the buyer.
Can
And
you
your other
say
one-
it ahead of time so you don't have to deal with the.
You can put it in MLS, but that doesn't mean anything. If the contract doesn't say it, doesn't matter.
And then when they call you to write the offer, say, hey, make sure not to check that box.
Yeah, you can put instructions. Must put in the contract terms, Tesla charger to not transfer with the house. But if they don't write it in the contract, it don't matter. It stays.
Tesla charge box.
Right there, it says exclude items, right?
What is that called in what instruction?
Wouldn't you put that?
The
No,
seller?
your other.
You can put it there, yeah. But this is the buy side. Remember, the buyer's writing the offer, not the seller.
No, we have, do something, at least you're starting, and you made a note to yourself.
Instructions, could you, instructions on,
What?
instructions that you attach, is that what Rich is saying?
Instructions that you attach. What do you
To
mean?
the MLS, that doesn't stay, or,
Say in your confident agent remarks, you put Tesla charger in the garage does not transfer with the property. Please put that language into the contract when submitting an offer. See, you write that in confident agent remarks in MLS. And they submit an offer to you and they don't have the language in there and you sign it. Or the seller signs it. What happens?
It doesn't matter.
Your seller.
Doesn't matter what you put in MLS, it matters what's in the contract.
You lost your
And
charge.
I know you guys can put instructions in MLS. Do agents follow the MLS instructions?
No.
Do they even read them sometimes? My God, right? So,
Well, it's a nice way for the buyer's agent to
Right.
communicate to the buyer that that's not.
it's a good way to judge if you have a good agent on the other side. Do they actually read the stuff and do what you want, right? All right, we all good with that?
There's a lot
This is
there.
a saucy crowd, I like this.
You got a lot of stuff there.
So we're on Q, all right? Natural hazard disclosure report, buyer seller boat, environment, other provided by. Please do not put seller's choice. The car and DRE would like us to get away from seller's choice term. The reason is like on the home warranty side, we often see seller's choice. There's a home warranty company in Southern California that opened up named Seller's Choice. And I bet not too long from now, there's going to be an NHD company that opens that's called Seller's Choice. And guess what? You may get into ordering an NHD that you don't even know about, right? So, or a home warranty company, right? So, CAR has asked us, and DRE has asked us to not stop using Seller's Choice because that is not an actual contract term. So, if you want to just put a provider, put in one you want. Heck, you should put Cap City NHD. It makes more profit for the office, which 48% of it is shared through profit share back to you guys. So you should just write Cap City NHD in, and you're good to go, right? All right, good?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you put seller, sorry, say seller, you choose the NHD. But that means you can actually be ordering an NHD from Seller's Choice NHD company, right?
Yeah.
When you really want saying seller, you can choose. But you can actually choose, make them counter it, right? So.
Okay, semantic change.
Correct. So reports, this is if you're going to put, do we put reports in contracts? No, we don't, because the buyers will, I mean, the lender will go to that. If you don't put your inspections in the contract, the only time you're going to put an inspection contract is likely when you have a VA loan and you need a pest clearance. So you would say, I need a pest inspection report. Who's going to pay for it? Right? There's mud?
I remember saying that before.
What?
They require FHA.
Okay, here we got Q5 and 6, which is the government inspection reports, which I get questions all the time. This is the two things that you counter that says, if there's mandatory government retrofit requirements, what are mandatory government retrofit requirements? Point of sale. Government required point of sale inspection reports. What's that?
Something change the property. You got to fix it. You said
Yeah,
the
it's another. So what are the California point of sale requirements?
I think it's a lead paint thing.
What? Yeah, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, water heater bracing, right? Those are California state required point of sale government requirement, retrofit requirements, right? Have to do those. There are some local jurisdictions that may ask for those, so this is what is common. What are some local jurisdictions that ask for stuff? Davis, the city of Davis asked for what? Your stupid permit building inspection, which is a disaster and a pain in the butt. Yeah, so you have to submit it. So if you were in Davis, you would say, who's paying for it? And then that says, who's actually going to pay for the repairs it asked for? So in Davis, you have to do the resale inspection. In Woodland, you have to do a fire sprinkler inspection. Did you know in the Placer County, you have to, although no one enforces it, you're supposed to remove all wood burning stoves and destroy the stove.
Is that put out by the city? Is that put out by the city?
No, by Placer County.
Oh, the county. Oh, because
That's strange.
So if you were out there in Placer County running and there's a wood stove in there, who's going to deal with it?
So now you have to.
So this is one of those where as a buyer, you got to be smart about what the local jurisdictions do, right? All right?
Yeah.
So so like in that scenario there, you're saying that those stoves are illegal?
Those stoves are illegal
But if the seller was still.
because they cause fires
And,
and they create carbon dioxide, right?
so if the seller is still using that.
Then if they buy the house, technically the buyer is now in a legal status.
Okay. So.
Now, there's no one that enforces it, but you need to inform your buyer, be like, if you buy this house with a wood burning stove, you're using it illegally in Placer County.
Well, they sell a lot of those. I mean, a lot of places.
In Placer County, okay. Yeah.
So I run across, in Davis, that most of the time, the inspections are done,
Prior to listing.
And I always do that.
Yeah, so even if you know the inspections are done, I would still check seller, do them. Because you want to acknowledge that the seller is still required to do them.
What about the corrective part?
That part is still done. If they haven't corrected, have they corrected it?
Well, sometimes you can pass it to the buyer.
Sometimes you pass the buyer, but if they, in the MLS, it says, oh, we've done the inspection, we've corrected everything, here's proof and it's attached, you can check seller.
Right.
If you wanted to, because the seller's already done it, right? So
So the other RPA, I can't remember, was it a checkbox?
It was.
Okay, so now we do have to address it.
Before you were supposed to address it, a lot of people just left it blank.
Yes.
And if you leave it blank, what does that mean?
That means-
That means it's up for negotiation.
Yeah,
So what happens? What if you're in a house, you're about to close, and they had to pull a permit because they had to do a plumbing repair, and the permit guy goes back and he's in Placer County, says, you got a wood-burning stove. You gotta get that out before I'll approve anything, right?
Yeah.
And it's blank now. And so I was like, I'm out. Sorry, that's your problem. You want to spend $1,500 to get the thing out and trash it? That's up to you. Good luck. And you know what? They have the right to negotiate because no boxes were checked. And with no boxes are checked, it's up for grabs. They don't have to agree to anything.
So either side can pull on the deal.
Right. And either side can pull on the deal because it wasn't checked. It's open negotiation. Make sense?
Yeah.
So this one, you can't do it again.
If you're on the buy side, I recommend you mark seller and make the listing agent do something about
Counter.
it. And then Tom Lance's gonna counter, like, you're in the Thomas, get out of here, right? We don't have no government required retrofit inspection, right? So,
This is flip-flop.
no, what they're doing is making you think a lot more.
No, I know, but I know, but it's like you have to actually address these. You can't just leave it blank like.
Yeah, because you know what's happening? They're leaving them blank, and then we have issues later on. You know how many Davis ones I've had with those not checked? And this is the freaking city of Davis, and they're not checked.
So.
They didn't know.
I had this one, check this out. There was this dispute, there's a dispute in the city of Davis. They didn't check anything, nothing was checked. City of Davis, resale inspection happened, 2 things were on it. There was a ceiling fan, there was a back patio with a ceiling fan installed, right, on the back patio, covered. And there was a gas line run, just a little bit from the gas meter, or I think from the water heater gas line to inside to the laundry room for a gas dryer. Make sense? Gas line to the dryer wasn't permitted. Electrical for the water thing wasn't permitted, not checked. So, there's a dispute. It's like, you do, the dispute. Buyer's like, you deal with it. Well, there's nothing checked. So I was like, I don't want to deal with it. You fix those things. Get those permitted. They're fighting, right? And I don't know if you read the Davis resale report. I mean, it says you either permit it or remove it.
right.
So the seller's like, screw that, takes them out. And the buyer's like, you changed the condition of the home. I didn't tell you to do that. No, you emailed says, resolve the issues in the report. I resolved the issues. Done. And they were like, and guess what happens?
Lawsuit.
Agent writes a check to reinstall a ceiling fan and a gas line that were removed so they can get past the Davis City inspection.
So that's a good, so if they.
Because they didn't check the boxes, there's no requirement.
Yeah, but see, when you say negotiations, there's times you're saying like, you don't want to pre-agree to terms, like let's say for fixing.
How's this? If I am a buyer in Davis and I know there's a resale inspection that has to happen on all permits, I'm checking the boxes. So, because you're signing your buyer up for potentially thousands of dollars in repairs that you're going to negotiate later in the contract. How's it going to blow up your contract?
Yeah, but for the seller,
But if you're smart and you're talking to the seller, right, you already tell them.
But the seller, that's why they said most of them ordered ahead of time. Yeah, because we're in Davis, we're listing agent, we know seller's going to have to do it anyways. It's just courteous to the buyer. We're going to do it anyways. It's a government
Well,
requirement.
why is it going to take forever to resolve an issue?
Exactly.
I
Same,
mean,
they repairs
so,
on repair permits. Now we're in COVID and it takes 3 months to get the damn permit, right? So,
Right.
that's. Like,
okay,
I'm here
you have to do a water sprinkler in Woodland. You have to do stoves in Placer County.
That's Sacramento.
Okay, say you're in Sacramento County and you ask for repairs and say, I've had this happen. The seller said the roof is bad. We had a previous roof fell out. Now we know the roof is bad. We got a bid. Seller says, I'll pull a new roof on. I'll put a new roof on once you release contingencies. Brand new roof. I have a bid. This company, here we go. So get a contract, you have roof, get roof, right? Release contingencies, seller puts a roof on. What happens when you put a roof on?
They can look at anything in the house.
You pull a permit.
Yeah.
And did you know we have point of sale requirements, but did you know there's point of permit requirements? Now they came in and they said, what?
Yeah, where's the permit?
No, they pulled the permit and the customer says, the roof looks good, but where's those water conserving plumbing fixtures? Did you know water conserving plumbing fixtures are a point of permit pull retrofit requirement? So I need some low flow toilets. I need some low flow shower heads. I need some low flow faucets. And you know, this wasn't checked. So you know what the seller says? Screw that, I gave you a new roof, you pay for it. Because nothing was checked.
The buyer could say,
And the buyer, what?
buyer could say, buy.
But it's not a requirement, no, he can't. Because you didn't put it as a requirement, the seller.
Yeah, but conditions change.
Conditions change, yeah.
The condition of the house didn't change.
They asked for.
Did the toilets get changed?
No.
Well, the roof is changed.
No, but you already agreed to that ahead of time.
Require it.
You already knew about that, so it was disclosed. So, if it's not checked, buyer has no out. If you release contingencies, you're out. Done.
So basically for our buyers, we just won't put sellers.
Yeah. And let John 19 counter you out. So. All right, because you don't know. You're saying, I'm gonna let this flow out there and hope it goes well. That's what you're saying. And last time I read, hope is not a good business strategy.
So, John, being on the listing agent side, we don't see the boxes checked, being a listing agent.
Then I would leave them unchecked.
Now, we
And
can
you
check
can't
it.
say anything.
I won't say anything because it's an
But
advantage
if
to the
they're
seller.
checked, then you counter it out.
Yeah, so if you don't check the boxes, you're writing that contract to the advantage of the seller. That's what you are doing.
Okay.
That's
So
what
you're
you're,
leaving it still for negotiation, you don't have to check the box.
I'm gonna counter it out.
Yeah, I would.
how's this? I don't like going, okay. What's your close rate from in contract to close? I bet most of you don't know.
No.
Most of you don't know, right? Is it something you should track? Yeah, did you know that? I know certain agents here close poor. That means they put something in contract, they fall out of contract more often than other agents. So why is that? Because they write poor contracts most of the time. Because they don't anticipate issues. They don't resolve issues, and then somebody gets into a dispute, buyer doesn't trust the seller, and they cancel, right? Make sense? The more you can clarify things, the more likely you're gonna have a solid contract, the smoother things go. I know it's a novel concept. So
Unless you deal with a COVID situation.
John,
yours is crazy, but that's it, yeah.
so let's say this happens in Davis, the resale. Let's say the resale's done, and then you get an offer, and they say seller. You don't need to counter out the resale the seller paying for the permit, the resale, because they've already paid for it. But you can counter out
Sorry.
the seller paying for the corrective remedy. Would you advise to do that if you got?
If you already have it done, if you already have it, let's say you had the Davis resale permit and you pulled it, and you got all the corrections done, and it's already done by the time you list, okay?
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if it's not completely corrected. Like, I have a problem right now where it's just taking forever to get the permit thing done.
If I were the buyer's agent, I'd say seller.
Right, but what I'm saying, I'm the listing agent. So if I get one that says seller, I would.
Okay, so say you have the reinspection done, you have issues still outstanding. And now you're gonna counter my buyer and say, if I don't do that, that means now, if there's any additional cost to the seller going forward for this report, I'm liable to pay that. It's a negotiation step. So I still have to go pull a permit. The permit cost, now that there's an inspection fee of $150 for the inspector to come out to verify the permit, now that $150 inspection fee up for negotiations.
Right, but that's why I'm asking. So I should counter out where it says the remedy. Counter it
No,
out.
well,
If the seller.
if I were a buyer, then
If they say seller to pay for that and it's not resolved, like.
if I'm a buyer's agent on your transaction, I would say we're not signing that contract. Then we're not in contract. Because why would I obligate my buyer for unknown costs in the future of your inspection? That's what I'm saying. That's what you're saying.
Especially in the city.
John, Davis is different because the seller is always required to do it anyway. So as a listing agent, you can't count.
That's not true. In there, you can put the repairs and say the buyer's gonna do it. And the buyer can sign a thing that says, I'll do it within the next 6 months. Yeah, you can pass it on.
They pass it on, it's 90 days.
It's 90 days. Yeah.
It's 90 days after the close of.
And this is what I'm saying is stop trying to put more negotiations into escrow. It only makes your escrow more unstable.
Right, but there is a problem. If there is a problem, like I'm going through right now, which I won't get into detail.
But that's fine. Then I would say seller's gonna fix it. It just may take some time, buyer. Just check the seller box. We'll take care of it. Don't worry.
But in the market that we're in, right?
Yeah,
we
it's
check
not-
these boxes like sellers well, right now buyers are having to pay for a lot of stuff. So I'm just saying, like, that's why, like, we wouldn't check those boxes, because we're like, you know, or we'd get it countered out in the contract now, saying they don't wanna pre-negotiate.
Okay, so let's say they're paying a lot of money now. I have to pay escrow title. I'm trying to write my contract. Buyer's paying a bunch of money. And I don't check these boxes, trying to make it more sexy to the seller. Now we have an issue later on. Now it's another $5,000. Now it's up for negotiation. Now the seller says, I don't want to pay it. Buyer, you pay it. Now we have in the middle of escrow another transaction said, you pay more money. Is your buyer gonna like that?
Well, they can cancel, right?
Does your buyer prefer that?
Well, no, I'm not just saying, though, if it goes into negotiation, it's kind of like if you don't come together, then it cancels.
Yeah, and that's why you have a higher cancellation rate than I do. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, if that's how you want to operate, that's fine.
Well, no.
But I operate to get deals closed.
No, but the
Right,
thing
that's how I operate.
Well, the thing is, though, in our set, we're in, you guys, like, I mean.
And we just got an offer accepted with a 3% seller credit.
We know this is like 15 years. Come on now.
They're all doing.
I'm just going to say this. It's not the same market it was before. I'm
No,
just going to say that. It's not the same market. If you think there's more multiple offers out, that everything's going multiple offers, you're fooling yourself and you're telling yourself a story, because it's not true. I can tell you that. Most of the listings are going in contract with one offer.
yeah. Well, put it like this, and it depends on price points too.
I got to move forward. So.
Yes. So
This is business practice. Look, you can practice business the way you want. I'm just saying you're going to have more disputes, more headaches, more drama, more management of your clients if you don't start checking boxes correctly.
Yeah.
Not correctly. That's not even marking them correctly. Deciding these things up front. Decide things up front with the listing. Trust me, the listing agent is going to be happier with you if things are decided up front of who pays what in case of what. It's always going to be smoother for the seller, smoother for the buyer, and everyone knows what they're getting into, right? When you punt things later, it all gets squirrely, right? So, okay, escrow fees, buyer, seller, both. They want you to stop writing 50-50 split. They both. But this one says each to pay their own fees, because did you know the buyer and seller may have different escrow fee amounts? If the seller is a joint tenant and their spouse died and they never recorded the transfer, the escrow is going to have to do a double deed, right? Double 2 grant deeds to do the first one and the second one. So they're going to charge more to the seller to do that. If you write 50-50 split, that means if the seller was 1,000, you're 500. Now it's 1,500, you pay 750. So your buyer's paying part of the seller's escrow.
So you check the last.
So if you want to check each to pay their own fees, and the seller will pay 1,000, your buyer will pay 500.
You could check, is it automatic?
If you hit both, it's automatically 50-50.
So that's the easiest way to do it that way.
That's up to you. I'm just telling you the options of how you're gonna do it. You choose.
Okay, what's your, that should keep people a lot more peaceful.
What's the standard in Sacramento?
50-50, I think.
But I suspect it's gonna change to each pays their own fees. I suspect.
It makes more sense to me.
Owner's title insurance, who particularly pays owner's title insurance in Sacramento? Seller, thank you. Seller. Escrow holder information here, title holder information here. Please don't, the escrow companies are asking, please don't put seller's choice. Please don't put seller's choice, because there's an escrow company opening up in Southern California that's named what? Seller's choice, yes, so unless you want your escrow in Southern California, I recommend you don't put seller's choice. So if they have an escrow they like, you should be talking listing agent. If they have it open somewhere, just right there. If you have your own, write your own in. All right. Buyer's lender title insurance. Did you know there's title insurance policy for your buyer's lender? Did you know that? But buyer typically pays that. They just put that in there. It was in the old contract, but they just make it more noble here. County transfer, city transfer tax. Who pays county city transfer taxes?
Seller.
Seller typically pays the county transfer tax. What if there's a city transfer tax? Split. Sometimes it's seller, sometimes it's split. So, who is the city that has city transfer taxes?
Woodland.
Woodland does not have. Oh, it does. Now it does. Sacramento has a city transfer tax. The only next closest city is, I think, is Vallejo. And in fact, the only cities that have transfer taxes are what? Anyone know?
Say that again?
Oh, the unappropriate
They were cities prior to statehood.
or
That means they were here prior to the state of California. California put a rule that says cities can't charge transfer tax, only counties can. And then the cities that were here before California says, hey, we were here before you. You can't do that. And they won. And so cities like Vallejo, because they were railroad cities in Vallejo, where railroad cities already established, they bucked the rule and they can charge their own transfer tax.
And also incorporate areas like North Highlands, like Rancho.
That's all county. It's all considered county, not city. HOA fees, remember, there was a law that passed a few years ago, sellers are required to pay for HOA docs. So it already marks that. HOA certification fee is if the buyer needs to get certified by the HOA certification fee relates to the lender. Remember, when you do a loan on a HOA property, the lender must get a HOA cert with the HOA to make sure the HOA is financially viable. We call that HOA certification for loan approval. The buyer must pay that because it's part of their loan costs, right? HOA transfer fees. So did you know HOA files transfer fee on top of the docs?
Yeah.
And those are negotiable according to state law. In fact, but it says here, unless otherwise agreed to, seller shall pay for a separate HOA move-in out fee and a buyer shall pay for a separate move-in fee. Applies a separate bill to itemized transfer. So if the HOA says it's just a transfer fee, then whatever you mark, that's how it's split. If they mark it as here's the move-out transfer fee, here's the move-in transfer fee, then the move-out will be charged to the seller, the move-in will be charged to the buyer.
Yes.
You can check both if you want to.
It'll automatically split.
Typically, the seller does pay the HOA. Typically, the seller does pay all the HOA fees in Sacramento. That's common. Okay.
Wait, so you're talking about all those fees that you just discussed, not just the
No, I said HOA. Yeah, all these. The preparation of the docs and transfer fee is typically paid by the seller in Sacramento. So typically, you would mark seller. You guys all mark seller on yours. But this just says if they bill them separately from buyer to seller, then they're going to split it that way, even if you mark seller. Okay. Private transfer fees, you don't have to worry about transfer fees or costs. This is where you're going to write if you're a VA loan and you want your pest clearance, right? Pest clearance is right here. All right. Home warranty. Now I'm going to talk to you about because the home warranty people are up in arms about this. Okay. Before you can check, remember upgraded, pool, washer, dryer, all that stuff, right? Now they took it all out. And I have more stupid HOA disputes than I can handle because agents are doing two things. They're not being clear about the HOA home warranty. What is it? We just had a dispute. Literally. Our buyer's agent wrote in a number. The house had a pool. They wrote in some plan that said, and they wrote on the other one, and they didn't put pool in there. The amount of money that they said in there was not sufficient to do the home and the pool. The home warranty company email that says, hey, you don't have enough money for the pool. Do you want to add the pool in, but your buyer's going to pay the difference? And the agent never responded. So they ordered a home warranty because that's what it said, without the pool. And then guess what happens when the person moved in?
Somebody drowned.
No, the pool didn't work. Pool equipment didn't work. So they called the home warranty company and said, you didn't get it. You should talk to your agent. Agent calls the home warranty rep, says, blah, 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 blah. And the home warranty said, did you see the 3 emails I sent you that you didn't respond to? I'm sorry you wrote it for a low amount. There wasn't enough money to put the pool in, and I asked you to ask your buyer if you wanted to pay extra for the pool, and you never responded.
Yeah.
And guess what happened?
The agent
wrote a $1,500 check to replace the water to the pump on the pool. Right? So be careful of this. If you're using Fidelity, for example, when I was practicing data, I'd have a brochure at my office desk, in my home office desk. I have a brochure next to it. So when I'm writing offer, I'm like, oh, how much? Oh, pool, I need to put the refrigerator in. I just write the amount. I write the amount in here. That's why they changed it to cost not to exceed. And there's a second clause. There's another clause in the contract that says if it's over, the buyer pays. Buyer will pay anything over.
Automatically? Or
Automatically.
So,
It's not negotiable.
like in your scenario, then they just charge the buyer anyway.
They
They would have charged the
the
buyer.
home warranty, yeah, the home warranty rep just put the pool in and charged more, and it was $250 more. Then on the closing statement, there would have been a $250 charge. No. There's a $250, then there'd be a $250 charge on the buy side at close for the home warranty claim.
And then the buyer would say, hey, agent, you owe
Yeah,
me $250.
yeah, the agent's like, I thought the seller was paying the home warranty. He's like, oh yeah, you know that number I wrote in it too low? I'm sorry. Is that what you're gonna say?
Give the
No,
check.
then the agent writes a $250 check, right? It gives it to him.
Better than a $1,500 check.
Yeah, it's better, but, or you could just write in the right amount, right?
Can't you call?
So I recommend you're gonna put in home warranty plan, put like upgraded, don't get the basic one. The basic one sucks. The basic, it's like getting minimum level car insurance, right? Like you hit someone, maybe it covers your bills, maybe it doesn't. That's right. You know what I'm saying? So get the upgraded one, seller or buyer pays it, get the cost right, and make sure you issue it to a company. Trust me, all companies are not created equal. There's definitely companies that have higher rejection rates of claims than others. Why?
That's why you have Fidelity then?
I use Fidelity, yes, for that reason.
Question,
Yes.
Q16 and 17, what did you say those were for?
Any fees or costs you want the seller to pay or buyer to pay, it is part of the contract. Classically, I've only seen like pest clearance and things like that happen, right? So. Other terms. Okay, going forward now. Now we're out of the boxes. Yay! Now it goes faster. All right. One thing changes. There used to be a RPA for probate, and there used to be a manufactured home RPA. For those of you who have ever done a mobile home, you may know this. Now they have eliminated those RPAs. You will use this RPA, and then you will attach a probate addendum or a manufactured home purchase addendum to the contract and turn it into that type of contract. Okay? Clear as mud?
Yeah.
All right, that includes tenancy and commons and stock cooperatives, although we tend not to see these in our area. They tend to be bare areas.
What's an example of other?
Other? I don't know. That would type of addendum. Well, okay, this would be if I'm, I would check other, it's a property type addendum. No, I don't know. What other would be? I don't know. Good question.
Your
Your addendum? I don't know. Your addendum. I don't know. These are all the same except for one, which is buyer intent to exchange addendum, seller intent to exchange. Did you know when you do a 1031 exchange, you must notify the other party?
yes.
And before people were just like, this is 1031 exchange. Now we have forms, check box. Form hold by, okay? So now on 1031 exchange, we're gonna ask for the disclosures. These are the same except for one, the wildfire disaster advisory. Wildfire disaster advisory, when does this kick in?
One.
When the seller has been impacted by a wildfire.
Yeah.
If they have to be if they have to be evacuated, if they have to do hardening and clearing of their property for fires, if they got house burned down and got rebuilt, wildfire. Wildfire came close to the home but didn't touch it, wildfire.
Is there a limit? I mean.
There's no standard on that.
So like.
But you need to CYA your seller. So on the listing
Right,
side,
but,
CYA your
you know.
seller, because if they know like, oh my gosh, my house got burned down, and they know that 2 previous times it almost got burned down, and seller never told me, that they could probably sue and say, this is a material fact that they should have disclosed to me, and
Well,
they owe me, right?
Well, I
They
was
owe
just
me.
talking about like, yeah, a wildfire occurred 1 mile or 5 miles or 10 miles away from my
There's
house.
no standard.
So.
So I'm err on the side of caution.
Okay,
And do you know about it?
How's this? I would say this, if on the NHD, it's in a high or very high fire zone, I'd
Okay.
probably use the wildfire zone, just to be safe, right?
that's what I'm saying, there's zones that are.
Yeah, so you need to talk, if you're rural, and you're like, hey, the Caldor fire, were you affected by it? Oh, that was a few miles over the hill, but we saw it, but we never did it. Wildfire, right? If they're seeing flames, they're gonna be a wildfire, right? Yeah, all right, okay. Okay, any questions on that?
Those are just advisories. I mean, they're not bad to have any.
Yeah, it's not, it's an advisory.
Right.
So a CYA is your seller, so err on the side of caution, right? So, okay, initial deposit, they have changed things. Buyer shall deliver directly also methods other than wire transfer specified in paragraph 3D that such method should be an acceptable escrow holder, then upon escrow holder delivery shall be wire transfer. So I'm gonna back up here real quick, all the way to the beginning. Remember, where you used to be able to write in check or, you know, check the boxes or whatever.
Like personal check.
Personal check, whatever, yeah. So now initial deposit, it says within 3 days, automatically by wire transfer. Or, and if you want to put a check, you'd have to or check the box and put check, right? But escrow companies asks for this, and so they put it in. Now, if you even wrote check, but the escrow company says, we're not taking a check, we're not open because of COVID, send a wire transfer, your buyer has to send a wire transfer. So the escrow company can reject anything you write in there and default to wire transfer.
Okay. But then the RPA right now is kind of like,
Yeah, RPA is like you choose, right? The buyer chooses how they want to do it. Now it's going to be default wire transfer. And as buyers, you can say, no, it's going to be this way, but escrow say, we're not doing that. Must be this way. I will say there's also a change. They have taken out all language for the broker receiving the EMD check. Okay? We do not want you to take possession of any check that is not your own money. If there is money toward a transaction that is not your money, do not take that check. You are making yourself a world of legal hurt. Okay? Do not do that, and that's why they've taken it out. The standard of practice now is the buyer delivers the deposit to escrow.
Does that include, like, if you're doing stuff like setting up painting and they give you a check to give to the painter?
Correct. The minute you take possession of money that is not yours, now you are holding money in trust. That means you must drive it. Say you're there, the buyer's there, okay, they're painting. I'll give you the check. He'll be here in 15 minutes to pick up the check. Legally, you would have to drive to our office, log the check into our trust log, photocopy and everything, and then we would have to sign off on you releasing it to the painter. And then you'd have to drive it back and give it to the painter. Actually, I'm releasing the check to you, and you have to go to paper, and then you have to bring back the form that says, yeah, the painter got it, he signed it.
What if we just put it on the refrigerator, Mac?
If you touch it, it's yours.
Okay, then we just say put it on the painter can pick it up.
I'm not touching
No,
anything.
if they say, I'm putting it on there, make sure the painter gets it, it's in trust to you.
What about if they mail it to the painter to the office?
That's fine.
And the painter picks it up from here?
Ooh.
Like, so they mail it to the painter, the envelope's addressed to the painter, and they pick it up from here?
From this office?
Yeah.
I don't like that. I mean, that's really iffy. That's iffy. I'd rather say mail it to the painter's address. Yeah. Because once it enters the building, and it's not just you as an agent, it's me as a broker. So I'm part of every transaction. So if a check comes in, it's received by us. It is received and in trust, all right? So.
Yeah, have mail envelope, that way you're out of the loop.
Okay. I want to point this out, retention and deposit. This is important. This is always the law, but we're seeing some stuff. Paragraph 29, if initialed by all parties, otherwise incorporated this into this agreement, specifies a remedy for a buyer's default. So this is liquidated damages. Remember liquidated cost? Both parties, they're going to say liquidated. The deposit is liquidated damages, right? If the buyer doesn't perform and close, seller may get the deposit, right? It says buyer seller are advised to consult with a qualified real estate attorney before adding any of the costs specifying a remedy, such as release or forfeiture of the deposit or making the deposit non-refundable for failure of the buyer to complete the purchase. Any such clauses shall be deemed invalid unless in clauses into place satisfy statutory liquid damages requirements set forth in the civil code. Have you had a place where the lender keeps going and they're trying to get it closed and it goes and goes and goes, and finally, like 45 days, they said we need one more extension to close, and you're so like, I'm done, and you say, why don't we just get them to give us the deposit as non-refundable, and we'll sign the extension if they give up the deposit? Have you done that? Right. Well, it happens more often than you think. Guess what? That is illegal.
Even though the buyer's doing it on their own? I mean, the buyer.
Here's the trick. If you make it that the seller makes it a requirement to make the purchase happen, the seller is breaking the law.
But if the buyer says, you know what, choose to make it good
What if
for
the
you,
buyer
I
says-
will do it. The buyer says, I'll do it.
Correct. But even the law says it can't be non-refundable. So say it says, here, I'll release it to your possession. And they say they cancel and say, I want the deposit back. They can sue the seller and say, give me the money back. That's what the law, California law says. You can't waive that.
So.
So there's no such thing as a non-refundable deposit. Zero. Even if you write it in, it says it will be invalid. Literally says it. Right? So any such clauses shall be deemed invalid unless it applies individually satisfies the statutory requirements of the code. This way damage clause says this is the buyer's deposit. It cannot be released to the seller or buyer. No one owns it. It stays there as remedy. It doesn't matter who has it. It's always a buyer remedy, right? And buyer doesn't lose possession of it.
So in that situation, and say we're going into negotiations about this, instead of saying non-refundable, now we say, hey, all right, Mr. Buyer, we want an increased deposit, and we'll give you the ETA to close this deal out.
You can do that. You can do that. You could do it. Said increased deposit, DID. Now we have a bigger deposit, right? Or, yeah, but now this is said if you make it a requirement to close.
Right.
So we had an example at the other office actually, which is interesting, where the buyers were doing that, and they're selling to buy, and their seller was selling to buy, and they were stuck because they were trying to move, but they were tight, and so they used all the money to buy the new home, but they didn't have money to move for the moving costs. They couldn't pay the mover. They were like tight. So they went to the buyers and said, "Hey, we still want to close. Everything's good. Can you just release it to us early? It's not a requirement to close. It's just could you release it to it early so we can use it to move, so we can get out sooner, and that way we don't have to wait till it closes, right?" And the buyers agent said, yeah, that's, what kind of buyers, yeah, we're okay with that. They let it go. Now, in that case, it's okay because it wasn't a condition to close. But if there was a dispute and the buyer deserved the deposit back, the sellers would have to give the money back. Make sense? Under the first. So if you make it a requirement that says, if you don't close, I'm going to release the deposit to me, and that's the only way I'm going to sign an extension, and if you don't close, I get to keep it, you violated the law.
But an increase
doesn't violate the law.
doesn't violate. Okay.
Or if you don't make it as a condition to close.
What would an increase do if they can't, it's not supposed to be theirs anyway?
Potential for a higher liquidated damage, like for mediation.
So when does the seller allowed to get the deposit?
Damages.
When?
When
What if the buyer doesn't release contingencies?
No, after they release all contingencies.
What if they haven't released contingencies and you notice to perform and 2 days pass? Can you get the deposit?
No.
You have to.
What if they don't put the deposit in? What if they don't close? What if they don't give you the seller docs? What if they don't sign escrow instructions? And you notice to perform them? Can you get the deposit back? Can you get no? Let's go back to the buyer. So the only time the seller has a chance at the deposit is if they've released all contingencies. You go to close and they don't close, and you give them a demand to close escrow, and you wait 3 days. Then after that, it's negotiable. It doesn't guarantee it to the seller. It's negotiable. Now, in Rich's case, if you had a higher deposit, now there's more to negotiate with, right? And I find these negotiations end up half-half usually. Like, buyer, you take half, but seller, since you're canceling and didn't close, give me half for my cost, right? Well, if you had 5,000, it's 25. But if you had 10,000, well, maybe you get 5,000, right? So it could help, but that's how it works. So you do it as you feel fit. So that's why it says consult an attorney, because just so you know, if you do say it's non-refundable and it's a requirement to make this transaction close and go forward and close, then you're violating the law, and your seller may be in violation of the law. And if they don't give up the deposit back, they may be stealing money.
So they've taken out that whole part of arbitration. Remember, you had those
No, it's still in there.
still in there?
It's still in there. I'll show you. All right, this is new. Buyer's loan status. This is important. You'll like listing agents will like this. Buyer's authorizing the seller and the seller's authorization to contact the buyer's lender to determine the status of the buyer's loan.
My head's spinning.
So this says, listing agent, you are allowed now to call the buyer's lender to get information about the loan, and the lenders and the buyers are giving you permission to do that.
Beautiful.
They are not. No,
They're not
required, because think about it, they have confidential rules too.
Yeah.
They have confidential rules too. They're saying you can call the lender. Actually, when the lender says stuff about the loan to you as a listing agent, they are violating their privacy law to that buyer.
Right.
They are legally breaking the law.
Not no more?
Right.
No, this says, buyer, you're giving me permission. The buyer can say, yeah, go ahead and talk to the, you can go ahead and talk to them. So the buyer can give me permission to the loan officer, say, go ahead and talk to the seller, that's fine, we're listening. So now they're giving permission, so now it's okay. All right?
Wait, just say it one more time, John. What's the big difference now?
Before, you could call the lender and say, as a listing agent, it's not your buyer, you're getting an offer. I want to call the field, like, are they really pre-approval? Are they really pre-qual? I want to check it out.
Yeah.
Legally, the lender is not supposed to tell you anything due to California privacy laws.
You said it changed.
No, I didn't say it changed.
No, this is saying.
I'm saying, this is saying,
Organization.
when he sends you when the buyer sends you the offer, the buyer is saying, listing agent, seller, I give you permission
But, yeah.
to talk to the loan officer. So
then-
now it bypasses privacy laws because the buyer gave you permission to, he's saying, the loan officer, my loan officer is allowed to tell you things about my loan.
But, which means, the actual person that's selling the house, everybody has to read the thing and realize what kind of rights they're giving up.
Well, that's not even right. I mean, how this listing agents are doing it anyways.
Right, we're already calling.
You guys are calling, well, okay,
Yeah.
you should be calling.
Yeah.
If you're not, then you're an idiot, so you're just a bad seller. You're not, you
Now,
should be
this is
verifying the loan information. This is just making it legal.
This is
Before, you're committing a legal act. You're violating privacy
Right,
laws.
This document is gonna protect the lender for releasing any.
Yeah.
confidential-
That means every time you call, the lender told you about the loan, they're violating the privacy laws of the loan officer was
Okay.
violating their borrower's privacy
Right.
doing that. Now this is the same language where it says, buyer says, I give you permission, so it's not a violation of privacy.
So John, during the escrow, you ask permission from the buyers to authorize you to talk to the lender?
No, it's already written.
It's
in.
already
It's already written there.
written.
Yeah.
So before it wasn't written.
As soon as they initial and submit this to you, you got permission.
Yeah, I see that.
You got blanket permission.
Yes, this is saying, this is giving you authorization to speak.
Yeah.
John, you think the lenders wanted that exclusively
Of course,
pronounced because it would make them feel very uncomfortable,
of
right?
course, yes.
Now.
Wouldn't you? If I was a lender, I'd be like, yeah, I want that because all my loan officers are committing crimes.
Yeah.
Every time they do this.
This is the protection of the lender.
Yeah.
The buyer's authorizing.
It says, if the contact information for the buyer's lender is different from that provided under the terms of paragraph 6, the buyer shall deliver updated contact information within 1 business day.
So if you switch lenders in the middle of a contract, right, then you know. Here
You
you
need to
go,
notify the other side and you have 1 day to get it to them.
and then you call that lender and verify what's up.
Yes.
Yeah, wow.
So this is helping lenders not commit crimes.
Correct. And helping you make your calls legal.
Yes.
Are we good?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to page 5 of 16. There it goes back there. Buyer stated financing. Where is that up here? On there. Seller has no obligation to cooperate, whose question was this? With the buyer's efforts to obtain any financing other than specified in agreements, but shall not interfere with closing at the purchase price on the close of escrow date, even if based on alternative financing. Buyer's inability to obtain alternative financing does not excuse the buyer from obligation to purchase party and close escrow in separate time agreement. What does that say?
Still gotta try that.
Well, you were never able.
The seller only has to cooperate with the loan that the buyer presented initially. They don't have to cooperate if the buyer changes the loans. But if they change loans and can still close, the seller can't stop it.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay, so what's a classic example? We start out with a conventional offer, and what happens?
They need everything.
FHA.
They need FHA because the bar is not so smooth anymore, and yada yada, we go to FHA, and now we have this new appraisal, and then what do we have to do?
You have to let the seller know, get it agreed upon.
Well, you don't have to, because the seller,
So that's a new.
So right now it's
no,
saying,
it's always been that way, actually. This is the same thing. So what it says is, seller, you don't have to cooperate with them moving but you can't stop them from closing. Can't stop them from closing. But you don't have to cooperate. So when you go from a conventional to FHA VA loan, what do they have to sign? VA mandatory clause, right? And when you sign the FHA VA mandatory, what does it do? So it makes you obligated and gives the buyer a right to cancel now, right? That is different. So the seller can say, I'm not signing that. That wasn't what we agreed to. I'm not cooperating.
Right.
And they would tank the loan, right? So this just says you can't prevent the close, but you don't have to cooperate with the change.
So, okay, so say it's conventional going to.
But if say they went to a convention to a hard money loan and the hard money lender didn't need anything from the seller, everything, and they still can close on time and everything, seller cannot stop that sale from happening.
Say that again?
Why would they
Well,
want?
how about
I
conventional?
don't know why would they want to, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
a better loan.
so if you have a conventional, say appraisal is done and everything, and then you.
Say everything's done.
And then FHA, you gotta change to FHA for whatever payment, whatever, right? And
So seller, the buyer can do that,
so he don't have to cooperate with.
but the seller doesn't have to cooperate with it.
Yeah.
But what I'm questioning is
So
this.
what's the
because-
point?
What's the point?
Yeah.
You don't want the seller to be the one that causes the cancellation of the contract.
Okay.
Or if you do it vice, but here's the thing, say you do FHA to conventional, whatever for you, right? And so, and say like, okay, they don't have to cooperate, but you're gonna have to redo another appraisal and everything else. So they don't have to cooperate with those terms. Does that make sense? So say you already did the.
Say you did appraisal, they got to do a new appraisal, they got to access the house. The seller says, I don't, you're past your 70 days for access, I don't want to give access. They don't have to cooperate. They can't stop the sale from happening, means they can't say, I refuse to sign and close with this loan. Can't do that, but they don't have to cooperate.
They don't have to sign the FBAC.
They don't have to change anything that takes away or gives rights or makes them do something that they weren't obligated to do on the old.
Does that
If they
include, the close of escrow date?
No,
So,
price,
cancel.
you cannot interfere with the closing at the purchase price, so at the price of purchase, at the close of escrow date.
Because-
So if they change loans and they can close on the escrow date at that purchase price and there's no additional obligations to the seller can't stop that sale from happening.
but if
Right.
they
You do the
extend the,
extension. And they don't have to agree to that.
They don't
They don't
have to.
Well, that's a normally anyways.
Well, what I'm saying is
but,
that.
but you're saying, but this is saying they doesn't have,
What do you mean?
As long as they close on that date.
As long as they close on the date.
but if the new loan requires that it go beyond that date.
They don't have to agree to that.
Well, that's the same as anything. You don't have to agree to
You don't
that.
have to agree.
That's any extension. Even if they kept the
Okay.
same loan
I just wanna make sure,
longer, you can, yeah, that's all an issue. Yeah, but that's what it says. If it closes on date at the purchase price and they change loans and there's no obligation to seller has to close it.
But if they don't allow the appraisal to come in, that will tank the loan and then they're.
Dead deal anyway.
If you don't sign the mandatory clause, they won't even order the appraisal.
Well, no, but if you did the opposite way around, FHA went to conventional.
Okay, well, it's up to your seller. This is saying, it's really up to your seller. What's your seller want? Do they
Close.
want to close the deal or not?
Yeah.
If you went from FHA to conventional, would that really bother your seller?
No,
No, exactly. So-
well, it depends. I mean, what if it's down payment assistance, it's still, same.
As long as you close it on this date, I'm
Yeah.
cool.
Well,
I get my money.
That one's, I got it.
Okay, let's talk about the seller remaining in possession for close of escrow. If seller has a right to maintain possession, I'm on 7C here. If seller has a right to remain in possession of the close of escrow pursuant to otherwise agreed, the parties are advised to consult with their assurance and legal advisor for information about liability, damage to injury persons, personal and real property. Buyer is advised to consult with the buyer's lender about the impact of the seller's occupancy on the buyer's loan and consult with a qualified real estate attorney where the parties will determine the ongoing rights as well as the buyer and the seller with each other, including tenant rights and what type of written agreement used to document the relationship between the parties. All right, what does that all mean? This is new. We're talking about redbacks. What happens when a seller, with their insurance, sells the home in redbacks? What happens at the time of sale?
Insurance?
With insurance, the home, they have homeowner insurance,
Right.
and they sell the home.
Transfer over to the homeowner.
No, you can't transfer homeowner insurance.
No. I'm saying the new buyer, the buyer probably now has his own insurance.
Okay, so say we have a SIP. So we have a SIP, 29-day rent back, right? SIP.
Okay.
Buyer buys a home, seller signs off, we close. The seller no longer owns the home. They do not have homeowners insurance. right? They don't own the home. They don't own, the buyer owns the home. Now, the buyer gets insurance because they're gonna move in 29 days, they get homeowner's insurance. So buyers kick in, right? Yeah, this says, well, if you're under the SIP, the sellers are required to maintain the condition of the property. What if we have a big rainstorm and all the fences blow down and it's $4,000 to fix the fences?
Yikes.
Hope you got good insurance.
Or say a tree falls down and breaks the roof and it's $17,000, we're gonna make an insurance claim.
Yeah.
But there's no insurance. The seller doesn't have insurance, right? And the seller's gonna say, buyers, can you put on your insurance? You have it. And they're like, well, you guys have a SIP, you're supposed to do this, but I'll tell you what, if you pay the deductible, we'll do it, right? But then the buyers are gonna get hit because when they make that claim, the rate's gonna go up next year, right?
Yes.
And two, what happens? The buyers, you know what the buyer's insurance company says?
They don't want insurance.
They say, claim denied. You didn't tell me this was a tenant occupied property. You said this is homeowner occupied. You should have had a tenant insurance policy. Denied.
Right.
And this happens more than you know. So this is saying, seller, you need to talk to your insurance people because when you're doing a rent back, you should probably transfer it into tenant and renter's insurance. Because under a SIP, seller, you are still responsible for the condition of the home.
Even when the home is big.
If there's a SIP and I have a 3-week SIP and I'm only there 1 week and 2 weeks, I still have possession. If they have possession of the property, they're a tenant, right? That make sense?
Yeah.
So as a listing agent, you need to be careful. You need to advise your people and say, hey, if you're going to do a rent back, you should probably transition your homeowner's insurance into renter's insurance during your 29 days or whatever you're doing rent back, because you're responsible for the condition of the home and you need it covered. And the buyer's insurance may not cover it because you're a tenant in the house.
But the tenant's insurance is really just covering their possession.
Yeah. And,
It's not covering the house.
You can cover the house.
yeah, you just have to.
You can cover the condition of the home.
It's a different kind of renter.
Yeah, you need to talk to,
Yeah,
it's not you. You said you need to talk to your insurance guy.
right.
Yeah, you need to go talk to, you need to talk to your insurance guy because I don't know what coverage you need to make sure that something happens while you're in possession of the home after we close.
Right.
So-
Yeah, they got the people, I know, just talk to the actuary.
And that's what this says, right? Like, go talk to attorney, do what you need to do, because there may be issues happening when your insurance cancels during that SIP, and you're still responsible for the condition of the home, and crap happens,
You
right?
want to get rating reviews from your clients. Remember
Is
this.
there one about like vacant? 'Cause my seller's house got broken into and all their stuff was taken.
Correct, so you need to check that. So there is tenant insurance. So like, I have insurance on my rental properties, and there's a specific type of insurance for rental properties. And in that clause, there's also a clause for amount of vacancy. They will cover up to 6 months of vacancy or 3 months of vacancy. But you have to look at your insurance company,
Yeah.
insurance cover.
They're like,
That's why people are always like, I want to invest in real estate, and they don't know these stupid details. Wouldn't you want to know your details if your house is vacant between renters and it gets vandalized, that if you're covered or not? I think that's pretty freaking.
Yeah.
But anyways, teach them. Like I said, a lot of people use hope as their business.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah, good. It's right. Okay. This is new. If there is no appraisal contingency, or the appraisal contingency has been waived or removed, then failure of the property to appraise the purchase does not entitle the buyer to exercise the cancellation right pursuant to the loan contingency. The buyer is otherwise qualified specified loan is able to satisfy the lender's non-appraisal contingency. This says, hey, I'm going to be tricky. I'm going to waive the appraisal contingency, but I'm going to keep the loan contingency in place. And if the appraisal comes in low, my buyers don't have enough money to bridge the gap, what I'm going to do? I'm going to cancel the loan contingency because the loan was denied. And this says, if you have waived the appraisal contingency, and the only reason the buyer can't get the loan is because it can't bridge the gap because of a low appraisal, buyer, you're screwed. You gave up that right, you can lose your deposit.
What about the inspection contingency? You waive the inspection contingency, appraisal comes in low, you still.
So now if you waive the appraisal contingency, it also applies to the.
No, So it didn't before, but I just want to point it out, and they made it big writing, they changed the writing. You can't cancel because your appraisal is low if the buyer would otherwise get approved for the loan. You can't cancel on loan contingency. So say you went and said, appraisal low is $20,000 extra. I need $20,000 extra. They can't. They said, I don't have $20,000, but that's okay. Just cancel on loan contingency because my loan's denied. This says, sorry, if that's the only reason because the buyer gave an appraisal guarantee and they can't honor it, too bad.
Call that lender and make sure that they're still good.
And that's the thing, lenders is very regulated. When lenders deny a loan, there has to be very specific reasons of why they're doing a loan because it's very regulated. So if they issue a cancellation, they have to do something in writing that says we're canceling for this reason. And if the reason is insufficient funds from the buyer to close due to low appraisal, they're screwed. They can't cancel. Right? All right. One last thing here. Failure of the buyer to obtain insurance may justify cancellation based on the investment contingency, but not the loan contingency. So if you bought a rural property lately, it's been hard to get insurance because all the houses are burning down, right? I don't know, some of these insurance are very expensive, like on the terms of property tax bills, like $8,000 a year. I mean, they're getting really big, right? To insure these properties. What if you're going through contract, right? If the lender says you need homeowners insurance, right? You need homeowners insurance. You release all contingencies. You go to your loan, your back every for loan, and the buyer says, "I can't find insurance I can afford." And the lender's like, "Yeah, that insurance you gave me bases up your ratios. We can't approve you with that insurance in your loan, right?" And you're stuck on insurance. This says your failure to get insurance, for the buyers to get insurance, is not a loan contingency. It's an investigation contingency. So what does that mean? If you go into the contract and you waive inspections, right? Like you all are waiving property inspections. Now this happens. I can't get insurance. It's too expensive. It blows up my loan. You released inspection contingency. Screwed. Can't use any other contingency to cancel. Makes sense? So now you're giving up that right. All right? All right, another thing here. Okay. Appraisals are often a reliable source to verify square footage of the subject property. Do we agree with that? Yeah. However, the ability to cancel based on the measurement provided by appraisal falls within the investigation of property. The appraisal contingency is solely limited to the value determined of the appraisal. For canceling based on this appraisal contingency, buyer shall deliver a copy of the written appraisal to itself. So this says, now normally when you get an appraisal company, say its value is right, there are no repairs, but say the square footage is off. Say it's advertised as 3,000. Tax records even say 3,000, but the house measures at 2,500 square feet. And I've had these issues because builders report things that are wrong. And buyers are like, whoa. I thought this was a 3,000 square foot house. I'm not buying I'm not paying this price for a 2,500 square foot house. Like, we need to renegotiate. We need to cancel, right? And this says the measurements that are on the appraisal are not tied to the appraisal contingency. They're tied to the inspection contingency. So that means if you waived inspections, but you still have loan and appraisal, if you have a measurement issue, you're screwed.
Buying the house.
You're buying the house anyways. Or losing your deposit. So I just want you to know, you see insurance, you see square footage issues, when you release your inspection contingency up front, you're giving up right to these disputes. All right?
John, quickly, somebody told me in the mountains, I talked to the truce guy, and he said, a lot of times your insurance, fire insurance is based on how close you are to the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I'm surprised they tell me that, but I mean.
Oh, it's a lot. It's whether you have a fire alarm on there, there's a lot of stuff. Okay. Try to move quick. Okay, this one is new. Buyer has 5 days after receipt to review revised preliminary report. Remember, new disclosure. So if they issue a preliminary report and then 20 days later, title issues a new revised preliminary report, it gives the buyer 5 days to cancel it.
Where's it? Oh, Aye, okay.
Buyer has 5 days after receipt of a revised preliminary report. So if they get a revised preliminary report, they have 5 days. Remember on the land purchase, we went back to them, asked questions, they give us a revised preliminary report. Now that when that revised one comes out, the buyer has
Reading parchment.
yes. Buyer reviews the lease and contingency. Buyer's review of the ability and willingness to assume any lease maintenance agreement or other financial or separately disclosed contingency of this agreement.
Solar.
Any assumption of this lease shall not require any financial contribution by the seller, self-first deliver the notice of prior form. So this, remember, you must disclose lease. If the buyer is going to assume leased items, you must disclose that. So it's a solar leases or alarm leases. I literally had an alarm dispute in Davis, and agent had to write $2,100 to get to pay off an alarm contract because the buyer didn't want that alarm company. So. I do want you to know, and it talks about here preliminary report seller documents. Okay.
I know this.
In the state of California, you have contingencies, right? We know you have contingencies. We know we have the FHA VA rights as well. Now there's another overlay on top of that. We call this the right of rescission. Okay? In California state law, there is a right of rescission. It doesn't matter what you say in the contract. It deals with the TDS, SPQ, the listing agent avid, preliminary title report, NHD, and fire hardening. If those docs are disclosed after opening escrow, it doesn't matter if they've waived all contingencies, they get 5 days. That is a state right. They get 5 days. Yes.
So just send it, have everything ready, when you list the house, everything attached, have them.
Correct. The only way you want to avoid the 5-day right. So say you get an offer, there's no contingencies, they can still cancel the minute you send them a TDS, SPQ, listing agent avid, preliminary report, NHD report, or fire hardening. Anytime you do those things, they can cancel. The only way to avoid that is if they sign them prior to offer acceptance.
It's the same.
So that means if you give them all the docs and you counter and say, these are all the seller disclosures, please sign, and all those docs were included in those seller disclosures as part of the counteroffer to say you must sign these docs, and they sign them and return them along with the counteroffer accepting your offer, then they don't have 5 days. But it must be prior to going into contract. Clear? So I want you to understand there's complication here, right? We have our contingencies. On top of that, we have state rights. State rights. And on top of that, we have FHA and appraisal rights, right? So we got all these things.
Wow.
And you gotta know these, right? So, all right. Questions on that?
Which item was that?
It is listed in I, but it is throughout the document. But I'm just going to let you know. There's different parts in the document on this. Really, I'll show you another second. But basically, HOA disclosures are also in there. Sorry, HOA disclosures. So HOA disclosures, TDS, SPQ, listing agent avid is also a requirement because it's part of the TDS. So listing agent avid. So if you're getting your listing avid's done late, guess what? Every time you hand that listing avid over, even if they waived all contingencies, you hand them a listing agent avid day 20, they have 5 days to cancel. So don't be lazy on your avids, right? So this is a change here. Now we're talking about included, excluded items. Okay, here. Windows and door screens, awnings, shutters, window coverings, which includes blinds, curtains, drapery, shutters, or any other material that cover any portion of the window. Before, it wasn't like that. Before it said whatever's attached to the house. So that means if you had a rod attached to the house with curtains hanging from that, then before the curtains would go, but the rod stays. Now it's changed. Now everything stays. And you can see if it covers any portion of the window, it stays, even if it's not attached. Okay? curtains, everything. Anything that covers the window.
Unless you take it off.
See, it's just a pretty one. It's not even curtain, it's just a design thing and it covers a corner of the window. So you just have something hanging up top, right? A little doily thing
So
up
take
top,
it
and it's
down
like
when you list.
stays. What? Yeah, if you don't want it, if they want to keep it, they need to take it off.
Okay.
So literally, I had sellers that wanted to keep all the curtains. I said, okay, and they had these white sheer, the sheer is a white little thing. I said, fine, take them off, leave the white sheer on. They're like, okay, and so we have white sheer windows. We sold that.
Now they're all.
Oh, you can counter it out, yes.
Unless you put in the beginning, I'm excluding curtains, right?
But you would have to counter it in
Oh, yeah.
because now the contract says they stay.
Gotcha.
So as a listing agent, you have to say, no, they don't. Okay? One thing that's changed, and we talked about this, unless otherwise specified in paragraph brackets attached to walls, floor, ceilings, any such furniture item will be removed and hold other repair. Remember, now the standard is anything attached to the wall that's attached to an audio or visual device. The bracket also goes with the device, but they got to patch the holes but not paint them. That's the new standard.
So you don't have to check the box anymore.
Correct.
So right now, like, yeah, with the old contract,
Mhm.
if you got the TV brackets, they stay with the old.
Under the current contract, the TV brackets are supposed to stay. The TV would go.
And that goes.
And now it's going to be, the whole thing goes, and they got to patch the holes.
And that goes with the
Any audio visual devices?
ceiling chandeliers.
No, audio visual devices.
Oh,
Okay.
even says, so, sorry, I just noticed this, for the pool and spa equipment, so.
Yes, anything in the pool is everything used to the pool, not even it's attached. So nets, everything you use, everything with the pool goes with the house. Nothing stays. Nothing goes. It all stays.
The big rubber duck.
The big rubber ducky, if it's floating in the pool there, it stays. All pool equipment stays.
You see those pictures?
Yeah. And most people will remove that before anybody sees it. But
Home warranty, this just says if you put that exceed amount and the amount that is not, this says if you put amount in there and the home warranty exceeds that price, the buyer will pay. This is actually the TDSD and other, next this statutory and other legislation. This is where it talks about those statutory rights, the right of rescission. The state 5 days no matter what, right? This right here. Okay. In 11. So if you want to read about what their rights is, it says basically 11 you have to do. All right, let's see, move it faster here. Sorry, I'm trying to move fast. Oh, I want to point out this one thing. Let's talk about TDS. Let's say you issued a TDS and let's talk about subsequent amendment. However, a subsequent or amended disclosure should not be required for conditions and material inaccuracies which the buyer is otherwise aware or which is discovered by the disclosure reports documents provided by the buyer. So we know, what does that mean? I issue a TDS, right? We know they have 5 days. Say they do the TDS are okay. The buyer goes and does inspections and they find more things. And they say, your TDS is wrong. You said it was this and no, we found out it's this, right? And they say, give me a revision. And you say, no, I don't have to give you a revision because I give you a revision, now I have 5 more days. This says if the buyer finds errors and through their own inspections, then it's not an additional disclosure material fact. I don't have to redisclose to them.
Because you found it.
Because the buyer found it and knew about it, right?
Okay, that's good.
All right. Woo! Sorry, keeping you tight here. Okay. Fire hardening, that's here. You don't have to do fire hardening. If it's in a very hot, it's probably located in a high or very high hazard zone and the home was considered constructed before 2010, then you should provide it. I recommend you just plan to have fire hardening in your thing. There's a box that says it's not in a fire zone. We will knock you if NHD says it's in a fire zone and you check not, or if you don't check it and said it is and it's not. Right, so. Termination right, withholding tax. Okay, we're good. I'm going to page 9. We're good. I'm going down to E on page 9. This is new. If buyer is a legal entity and the property purchase price is at least $300,000 and the purchase price is made without a bank loan or similar form of external financing, a geographic targeting order is issued by the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network by the U.S. Department of Treasury requires title companies to collect and report certain information about the buyer depending on where the property is located. What's it saying?
Get back in his grow house.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Money
So
laundering.
if you're laundering money through you're paying cash for all these things. We had a certain prominent real estate agent in the Sacramento area get hit for laundering money for the triads, right? Literally got arrested, is in jail right now. This says now $300,000. The buyer's gonna, the escrow's gonna ask the buyer, where'd you get this money? Prove to me where it came from. Track it down. And if they don't want people looking in their thing, then they better buy under $300,000. So cash. So if they're buying cash and they're paying $300,000 or more, the federal government's going to get nosy, and escrow's going to get nosy. Says, "Where's the money coming from?"
So now, with an all-cash offer, or the person, when they're submitting their offer, I thought earlier they have to show
Proof of funds.
proof of funds.
But they're going to go farther.
Okay.
They're going to say, I got proof of funds, but where'd it come from?
Yeah. Well, it's in my bank account.
That's my bank account. Okay, show me the history. Show me the deposit check. Where'd you get the deposit check from? Why did they put 300 and now you're buying 300 or something? Like, you put deposit 300 last month, now you're buying a house for 300? Who gave you the 300? Why did you get it?
Yeah.
Oh, my brother gave it to me. Red flag, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. They track anything over 10,000, they track anyway.
Oh, yeah. Well, now you get extra tracking. So. But you're going to be talking about that FinCEN. We call it FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So. Okay, we're going forward. Most of this is all the same. No seller form. We're all good. This is all the same. It's about letter of cancellation. I'm going on to page 12.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. That's why it's better, because before you'd have to find all these little boxes and do it. Now it's all up front, right? So, start buyers on page 12. Never mind. We're going forward. It's all the same. Okay, I'm going to talk about delivery. Oh, I missed something. Hold on, I gotta go back real quick. Yeah. Something important I need you to know. Okay, it's, sorry, I'm going back to page 11. Oh, no, sorry. Not page 11. I have to go back to 11.
Looking for delivery?
No. Good.
I'm looking for, there's a new process for, if there's a dispute. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna go back all the way to 7B, which is on page 5. Sorry, I gotta point this out. This is a big change. So I overlooked it. Page 5, 7B.
7? D is the dog, okay.
Condition of property on closing. So we're talking about condition of property at closing. Right? Unless other agrees, the property shall be delivered as is. Did you know all contracts are as is? And present physical condition at the date of acceptance. So that it's got to be the same condition as the date of acceptance. If the property, including pool, spa, landscape, ground, equipment, to be maintained essentially the same conditions as the acceptance, and all debris and personal property not included in the sale shall be removed by close of escrow or at time of possession is delivered. If not, on the same date. If items are not removed when possession is delivered to the buyer, all items shall be deemed abandoned.
Boom.
This is a change. Before, they never even talked about this. So if there are personal items left in the house, buyer takes possession, seller is deemed to give them up. Seller can't say, oh, I left it there, come back and get it. Up to the buyer then. Buyer owns it.
We had that.
Without any,
They abandoned it. This contract says it's considered
like in
abandoned.
rentals, if you abandon, you have to, you have to hold them in wait.
Well, that's because of tenant law. That's not because of this law. So that's
There's
tenant
no
law.
waiting period.
No. So on this one, if you're a home buyer and there's a seller and sell a lease up in the house and they move out and they want to come back and say, oh, I forgot that, can you grab that for me? Buyer owns it. It was considered abandoned.
That's garbage.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about debris. What if they abandoned it, but I don't want it? Right? items are not, abandoned. Buyer, after first delivering the seller a written notice to remove the items within 3 days, may pay to have such items disposed of and bring legal action as per this agreement to receive reasonable costs from the sellers. So now we put in a mechanism. If there's debris left at the house, buyer's like, I don't want their shit. All right? Is that recorded? Okay. So now they can send a letter to the seller and say, you have to remove this within 3 days. And if you don't, I can pay to remove it, and I can sue you in small claims court to get my money back.
What is, I'm not trying to be silly, what is like a carpet that is really messed up considered debris, or just?
No.
It's attached. It's carpet.
But you can argue with this because it says the condition must be delivered at the date of acceptance. So, but that means the carpet wasn't dirty before, and now it's dirty.
Right, that's what I.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
the condition has to change. The condition has to change, or they have to leave stuff there. One of the two things. If you do that, you got to give them a letter 3 days. Now, if you go in your zip forms, you're always in the forms library, car forms library. You actually go to the top, you can change libraries. There's actually a car letters library. If you go to the car letters library, you'll find a letter for the 3-day notice. So your seller says, your buyer says, hey, there's a bunch of debris in here. Says, oh, we got to give notice 3 days for the seller to come take it out or fix it, right? If you have a letter, you go to the letter, say, here, sign this letter, and you give it to the buyer's, listing agent, say, hey, give this to your seller. Give them 3 days to do this stuff, right? Clear? All right, I'm gonna go back all the way to page 11. Sorry, I had to do that because that is a change, a pretty big change, right? Okay, we're gonna go all the way to page 13 on deliver. Only change over here is they boxed the the liquidated damages and arbitration because those are optional. So they said to box them. So, all right, sorry. Page
14.
No, page
14.
14 or 16.
13.
14,
Oh,
14
yeah,
and
yeah,
16.
13.
13 and 14.
Liquidated damages.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
The box is around 14.
Okay, I want to go back to 13 and talk about delivery. Okay. There's been a lot of dispute about delivery because when you deliver a notice to perform or demand to close escrow, remember it's 2 or 3 days, right? But what constitutes delivery? Say I sent the notice to perform on Friday, but they say got it on Monday.
Right. When did they? When was delivered?
Was it delivered? Did the 2 days start on Friday? Did the 2 days start on Monday?
Depends on how you deliver.
Depends how it's delivered, yeah.
If you deliver an email.
Yeah, when you deliver email. Is it when they received it or is it when you sent it?
When you sent it.
No.
When you sent it. Just
The,
because they didn't.
the contract used to say when it was received.
But you see, it's received, you just didn't open it.
No, that's.
Doesn't matter. So that's the question. Was it received? And you could say, I didn't look at it. It ended up in my spam. I didn't receive it till Monday when I found it.
But you can mark an email that says that it was delivered.
You can find that.
Yeah, you can say it was delivered, but
No, but you can mark
It's
it.
not about being delivered. It's about being received.
That's what it was said.
Okay, I mean, so they put it in their mailbox and they don't go to their mailbox for a month. What do
Okay.
you want?
Exactly. So you're saying this. So there's been fights over this, right? About when do these things, when is it considered delivered and received, right?
Yeah, but the real estate thing will tell you if they
We're gonna
opened
go
or not. On your real estate referrals, like, car things that you sent.
Well, if you send a DocuSign, yeah, but if you're just going to send them a notice to perform, you send an email.
We're confident.
What if they went through the storm and their power's out because they live downtown?
Okay,
Did they receive it? No, right? They didn't even have, nothing worked. The power's off.
okay.
So,
That's like, no.
So what does delivery mean?
So we changed delivery. I'm going to not read that, but I'm going to go all the way to the end, which is the last page. I'm going to talk about real estate broker section. So now the last 2 pages are the buyer and seller signatures, and then they put all the brokers on a separate page. So,
Okay, so real quick, on delivered now, it's what you said.
no,
What's the answer?
it's not. It's contingent on where you send it.
So what's the?
So look, agent signatures, buyers, sellers, just like normal, right? But you look at this, designated electronic delivery address,
There we go.
email, text number, alternate number, and if I check this box, delivery shall be made to the alternate address only.
Wow.
So when you put this in there, if I send the notice to perform to that address, delivered,
Boom. Thank you.
automatically delivered that day.
But all of them, somebody thought,
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they were in the storm and had no power and they didn't check their email because their phone got, they dropped the phone in the puddle. Doesn't matter.
So you put this
If
on-
you send it here, it is delivered.
okay, so to send up, you should have everybody, all the information for it.
No.
The phone number, everything.
If they have an email here, but you send it to another email they're using,
That's
not delivered.
It's not delivered. So when you're writing.
Not delivered until they say I received it. But if you send it to the email they say in here, delivered.
So,
If you have a text number here and they text it to you, here's the notice to perform, delivered. If you have an alternate, then they can send to either one, delivered. They don't have to put an alternate. If you have your assistant here and you're like, send this all to my assistant because my assistant monitors the email better than I do, give it to my assistant and you can check the box and say assistant. But then, if your assistant doesn't check it,
Right.
you're out.
Wait,
And if there's both, if this is not checked and there's two emails, they can send it to either email and it's considered delivered. Okay? Are we clear?
so it's
But
like a
don't
working.
you have all the information, I mean.
No. It's not what their information is.
That's,
It's what they put in the email.
there, go back there. Where are you
So-
sending that off?
Yeah, because they often said, oh, yeah, that email's in the offer, but that's not the email I use normally, right? That's my KW email, but I use my Gmail account normally, right? Now, it doesn't matter. If the KW email's there, delivered. And that goes for the sell side too. Sell side too, right?
I'm gonna.
So I want to get a notice to perform to the seller,
I put you in here too.
right? How do I make sure they receive it? I send it to that email address, delivered. Listing agent is delivered, right?
I like that.
I might be jumping a little bit ahead, but like when you're doing your cover sheet,
Yes.
do things get automatically populated?
I don't know how they've updated the cover sheet yet. They did not disclose that to us.
We can anticipate some.
But I can tell offers that are written off of cover sheets because a lot of the boxes aren't checked and I know which ones they don't check. The agent doesn't go back and check. And it happens quite a bit. So if you're using your cover sheet to only do the offer and assuming that's good enough, you're screwing yourself. Okay?
No, but I mean like filling out things like emails and phone numbers.
I don't know how it's gonna populate. So you're gonna have to test it. Like if I put that email in, is it gonna show up in mine?
I did right now, it's not.
It's not showing up, right? Yeah. I imagine it wouldn't because they want you to be very clear about this, right?
If you got all the information.
And honestly, if I was a listing agent and I get an offer and it's blank, I would counter in, buyer's agent's delivery, official delivery address on 5A shall be whatever email they sent, right? That's official.
I'm gonna have a 3-page counter offer every time.
Yeah.
So that's our way to address seller. And you also can put in an address. So if they walk it in, put it at the front desk, delivered. All right.
I like this.
Can you deliver more than one?
You can deliver what the heck you want.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
You
that
can
would be.
deliver the whole seller package if you want to.
Yeah, well, that's a little much, but.
Okay, last thing, I'm going to the page 15, the page before this. And now what I like is both the buyer and seller signatures are on the same page, which is a nice thing. One thing they did do, which I love, is RCSDs. That means, remember we had to do RCSDs for entity buyers and sellers? Those are going away. They're building them into the contract. Now you see up here, it says entity buyers. If the buyer is an entity, for example, a trust. Say you wrote an offer for me, and it says on the buyer line, it says Barnado Family Trust, okay? You would check entity buyer. But then this says, well, who's legally authorized signers? But John Barnado and Rhiannon Barnado, right? You put it in there. And then it says, but what's it actually the trust name? and you obviously write the trust name, but the trust name is actually something different. Mine is actually the Jonathan Lee Barnato and Rihanna C. Barnato Family Trust, dated, I don't know, April 9th, 2001, right? That's the name of the trust. So the actual name of the trust goes here. The actual full legal name. So you can put something smaller up in the byline, but here you got to put the full name.
So you have to have a copy of the trust. Huh?
Which is we're talking about, we need to have representative authority, right? Evidence of representation, right? You got to like, what's your real trust name? I don't know. Send me your trust cert. The trust cert will say the trust. You type that in there, right? If you put that in there, check the box, then you notice it says signature, it says printed name. They'll say check printed name of legally authorized signer. So in this case, it'd be John Barnato signs. It says John Barnato here, and this is printed legal name signer John Barnato, right?
Yeah.
And then it says title, trustee. And then same thing for the seller side.
And then if you have more than one signer, then you check that.
Then you check the ASA box and do the whole thing. If you check this box, put the entity in, and check those boxes with the legal office and title, you don't have to do an RCSD. Which saves you a whole form and a bunch of crap, right? So do that. All right. And same thing goes for the seller side as well. So if you're on the list side and they submit an offer to you and you know it's a trust, then you can avoid doing the RCSD and you can just fill it all out and then have the seller sign, and it will be all legal at that.
They still have to produce that trust though to the title.
To title. The title will have to have evidence authority for the QA, right? QS, sorry. Okay, that is everything. I'm sorry I went a little over. We had a lot of questions. Any questions?
Not yet, but they will.
If you stick to the first 3 pages with the boxes, and you make sure you look over every box and those boxes are filled out, you're probably going to be okay. You're probably going to be okay. So, all right, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Sorry it took so long.
That's what they say.
A long contract now. So.
That's what they say, turn it to you or Amy, try to sell it agreement.
Correct.
Because that way, you can fix it before, next level, that's a whole.
Oh, no. Well, normally it's like this. We only change it for a team
No,
meeting.
not today, because I got a bunch of, I have
You
to
got
get information.
Yeah. Actually, a heck of a lot, a heck of a lot of stuff there.
Are you confused yet, Harold?
I'll figure it out.
It's gonna be confusing until.
I'm beat. I'm this stuff a lot.
Yeah, appreciate it. You started doing it right, so
Used to it.
I take care of you.